Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Market Open. It is Wednesday, August 19th. We are live, and my goodness, the amount of things that are going on in the pre-market. It's kind of crazy. I know we are pretty much done with earnings season. We have a few more important earnings left with NVIDIA coming up next week. But today is one of those days that even without earnings, and we did have a few earnings that are pretty important to go through that we'll talk about, Target being one of them. A lot of stuff in the consumer space this week that is something to really take a look at. We've got a ton of stuff that's happening, and this stuff is absolutely making the pre-market go a bit up and a bit down in different sectors. I can see the comments right here. MRVL, that is greeny green. They got a pretty big announcement today with the Googs, which unfortunately is why Broadcom is red, as that stock's down about 3.4%, recovering a little bit from the 359 lows that it got. We will talk about that. Nebius did some dilution on an offering today. That stock is down 5%. Robinhood's up because Vlad just went on CNBC and basically said tokenization is eating the entire financial system. We will talk about that. You got your photonics names that are up. AAOI up 6%. Lumentum's up 3%. S&P 500 pretty much getting back everything that it lost, back to 770 in the pre-market based on some of these updates that we'll talk about. But it was 767 yesterday, down about 1.5% over the past couple of days. Now right back up to 770, up 0.45. Last night was looking kind of ugly on the futures as well because you had some other major updates from Openai, which is going to consume a lot of the news flow over the next coming days, given the numbers that we officially got from their revenue outlook, which weren't the best. But it also wasn't as bad as I think some people are turning it out to be, which is why the semi stocks did go down last night when those numbers came out. They just, weren't as good as what the market wanted, kind of similar to when Anthropic said they're doing $65 billion in revenue run rate versus $75 billion. But it's also not horrible. And I think as a result of that, you're seeing some of these names rebound. SK Hynix announced a massive buyback program last night as well that also accelerated the ignition in some of these memory stocks, getting some more love. You had Micron that was kind of pushing almost to the low 920s last night, now 963, up about 2.3%. You got SanDisk that was pushing below almost 1500 or below 1600 yesterday, now almost at 1700, 1688, as that's up 3.7.3%. You got a bunch of upgrades and downgrades across the board in a variety of different stocks. Duolingo accidentally leaked that their user growth is up 27% Q over Q. For Q2 in an investor day, and that's why Duolingo is up 5% right now. They were at 151, 147. They had to file an 8K apologizing for the leak at a closed investor conference. But now the market knows that Duolingo's growth is reaccelerating. So you just got so many things that are happening right here. Yeah, quote unquote, accidentally. And, there's a lot to analyze as we get into everything that is going on. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Oh, and I didn't even mention Moderna. That stock is up a whopping 95%. I have been all over this Moderna story, and we'll talk about why. Quite frankly, it's because I had to drop my aunt and uncle off to the airport, so I had to wake up at 4 a.m. So I haven't slept since 4 a.m., so I've been awake, so I've been seeing all this news, and this was one of the craziest updates. They've created a personalized cancer vaccine that was effective in phase 3. And as a result of that, the headline is essentially people thinking they've created a very meaningful cure for different types of cancer that is out there. Stocks up 95%. You're going to have a lot of excitement if you actually are successful in something like that. So we'll talk more about that as we get into the show, as you're seeing a bunch of different headlines come out across the board. All right, so let's get started with MRVL. That is the kind of first major update that we've got going on right here, up 10.5%. This is a really interesting story. MRVL got to $330. It was at $220. Jensen said they're going to become a $1 trillion company. They got all the way from $220 to $330 in about a week after he said that. Market was very excited. You have, the world's most important AI technology founder CEO saying, hey, this company's going to $1 trillion. The hype faded. Deleveraging happened in July. A lot of people got liquidated. The stock fell all the way back down to the 180s. Google just put a floor on the stock. MRVL has issued Google a warrant to buy up to 58 million shares of the company at $206.58. This is about 7% of the shares outstanding. The partnership is basically going to be expanding MRVL's custom work on silicon programs that attach to the TPU ecosystem. That is why Broadcom is down. I think the Broadcom sell-off is a massive overreaction. The stock was down 6%. Now it's barely down 2% because Broadcom is not going to stop working on the TPUs or stop servicing parts of Google's ecosystem. But it does mean that Google's diversifying into other vendors. And Broadcom already said this on their earnings 2 months ago. They said, hey, Google is diversifying into other suppliers. We're not going to be the sole supplier for them like we were for the past couple of years, which is normal for Google to do. And it's also normal for Broadcom to grow out of just having that exclusive spot. So I don't think the Broadcom sell-off makes any sense. I think that's why it's recovering right here, although the headline might be negative for it, and you might have that be a short throughout the rest of the day. But MRVL, I mean, getting Google to agree to buy 7% of your company at 206, it's not like this is a warrant to exercise shares at a penny. This is like, no. If you're going to buy stock in our company, you're going to be an investor here. You got to buy this thing at $207, which effectively is saying we don't think, I mean, Google is basically saying we don't think MRVL is worth below $207, which is important because MRVL did get below 207 over the past month. Again, it got to 157 from 330 on July 29th. Maybe that 157 was a bit exaggerated because of the leverage sell-off, but still the fact that it was able to go below 200 just meant that some people are questioning. And basically it's been teetering around that 200 to 215 range over the past couple of weeks, ever since the recovery. Which has been making a lot of people think, like, is this thing actually worth what it is, what the premium was that we were paying for it? Or, was Jensen kind of just exaggerating? And maybe he was exaggerating. Maybe it's not going to go to trillions. Right now it's at 200 billion. But I mean, if Google is that confident to buy 7% of the company because they see how valuable it is for their TPU infrastructure, if they get a few more deals like that and the broader optics TAM increases, which is kind of where MRVL is situated in, I mean, who knows? Maybe it's going to be a much, much larger company than it is today. 239.95 right there in the pre-market on MRVL as that continues to go green. If you own this name, you are pretty happy. That's up 11%. Again, Broadcom right there. That's down 2.3. Rick, I know you're big into MRVL. Thank you for the super chat. There you go. Rick is still here as he continues to be long MRVL. Now, this news, along with a couple other headlines that we'll talk about, is helping the indices. S&P 500, again, right there, up about 0.5%. I mean, yesterday night, it looked like we were going into a red pre-market because futures were pretty ugly red. Qs right there, up 0.54%. Oil is still green. And actually, oil just flipped red. Okay, 5 minutes ago, oil was at 85.50. There you go, 84.67 on oil. The 10-year, by the way, is also coming down very nicely, which makes sense for why oil is coming down. And we'll talk about that in a second. But now it doesn't look like the sort of red jitters that were creeping up yesterday during the day, which, kind of felt like we were up 2 weeks vertical, probably needed a little bit of sell-off to give some of it back. And the sell-off that continued into the after hours, because after hours was pretty ugly. I mean, we were almost down 1% across the entire board. It looks like that is changing for a variety of different AI headlines, but also for some of these macro issues. And one of the things that the Treasury did, as you can see the 10-year right there, 4.6 versus 4.7, which is a pretty substantial decline. The Treasury more than doubled its long bond buyback ceiling to provide greater liquidity support in heavily used long-dated Treasury sectors. This was announced this morning. The U.S. Treasury will raise the maximum liquidity support for buybacks for older 10, 20, and 30-year nominal coupon securities from $2 billion to at least $4 billion per operation. I am not an expert at the way the United States Treasury engages in maximizing liquidity support for treasuries, but it kind of feels like quantitative easing. I mean, I know it's not literally printing money, but the way that they're guaranteeing a backstop to support, I know the Fed is the one that deals with QE versus explicitly the Treasury having the type of role that they have historically had. But it does feel like it's an artificial way to make sure there's enough liquidity, which is good because that means there's more money going into bonds. That means yields are coming down. If yields come down, that's obviously very good for the stock market. So I think that ended up helping us flip the S&P 500 right here going green, along with some of these AI headlines. Obviously, the negative impact of this is that there could be some inflation implications. But at the end of the day, if the Fed is or the Treasury is really willing to backstop some of these treasuries, then that makes a lot more sense. They also said this: the operations manage debt market liquidity. Treasury states that liquidity support buybacks are not intended to alter the overall debt maturity profile. Obviously, different market participants will have different questions about that. But the point is, Besant's coming in and saying, we're going to buy up these damn treasuries. And if we're going to buy up these damn treasuries, we're going to make sure these yields come down. MRVL right there up 12.5%. So you got a bunch of AI headlines. You got oil actually coming down. Trump didn't say anything about Iran, but there was a headline yesterday after hours saying that they are privately negotiating. Both sides are just not acknowledging it. So, then you had UAE, had missiles that they're saying are coming from Iran. So you have all these different geopolitical whirlwinds that are going at you. But at least you have some support on treasury yields, and at least you have some AI headlines that are kind of bringing a lot of that excitement back into the market. even though it kind of feels like it's a form of quantitative easing. The reason Nebius is down is because they diluted by $5 billion. 236 right there, down about 4.7%. It's about $4.5 billion. So let's get into that headline. Also, we got to talk about the Unitree IPO that happened in China. That stock is up 700%. People really want robotics. Nebius announced a proposed private offering of $4.5 billion of convertible senior notes, $2.75 billion due in 2030, $1.75 billion due in 2034, the potential for an additional $675 million. And that is why the stock is down. Even after the New Jersey increase with the data centers or the New Jersey approval for data centers that Nebius got. Obviously, yesterday was a really ugly day for semis, which took Nebius down regardless of that news. Then you had this type of news go out there, which is not necessarily the best thing in the world. So Nebius is building a 1.2 gigawatt AI data center in Pennsylvania, and one of the more moderate Democrats that's out there when it comes to AI technology, spending, all that stuff, Josh Shapiro, is considering like putting a moratorium on data centers in Pennsylvania in general. In fact, this is what he signed yesterday. I just signed an executive order implementing the strictest standards in the nation for AI data centers because I will not allow Pennsylvanians to be bullied by greedy developers and bulldozed by the lawyers working for these big tech companies. Effective immediately, we're requiring AI data centers to commit to strict environmental and transparency requirements and receive approval from the local community if they want to build here. That's not all. We're also removing all data centers from our fast track permit program and stopping any office or agency under my jurisdiction from signing an NDA with AI data center developers. So from my understanding, I don't think this stops the data center that Nebius is already building in Pennsylvania. But the perception of it, once again, is that you've got another state outside of New York that's saying we are going to make it really tough for these companies to set up data centers, and they're going to have to file every letter of the law to be able to make these data centers actually come online. And I think that in and of itself is a negative headline for Iran, CoreWeave, which is why all these are down in the pre-market. Obviously, the Nebius dilution, Iran just flipped green. It was at $40, now at $42. It's not the best thing for the data centers. CoreWeave also just flipped green. So Nebius is actually the only one that's red based on that data center headline. Nebius got to 225 in the pre-market, now at 238. So it's actually had a pretty big rebound. CoreWeave was at $90.50, now at 93. Iran was at 40.50, now it's at 42.50. So I think you put those two headlines together along with the semi sell-off we had yesterday. Yeah, that is why Nebius is taking a little bit of a tumble right here. It's going to be really interesting when the market opens if this dilution stuff even matters. Nebius, a lot of these data center plays have usually brushed off the dilution concerns because if you're investing in these neoclouds, effectively you are investing into a company that will dilute in order to grow in the future. That's kind of the nature of the business model. So it's not like the biggest concern. But I think the Pennsylvania news, along with the broader sentiment around neoclouds mixed with dilution, could be the catalyst, along with the fact that this stock has had a massive run, right? 140 to 280. Taking a breather at 240, a little bit of an expensive breather, but nonetheless still up a lot from 140. That's probably why the stock is having some pain. So I could see this rebounding pretty easily as the market opens, given we're seeing the other neoclouds rebound. But if the market cares about dilution today, which sometimes the market does care about dilution when it comes to these neoclouds, then maybe these stocks will take a bit of a hit. Wall Street really is the greatest show on earth. Wall Street is the absolute greatest show on earth. Let's talk about Moderna, 91%. That continues to be green. So Moderna is interesting. Part of the benefit of being awake and not sleeping in the pre-market is you get to see a lot of pre-market news. Again, I was up today because I had to drive my aunt and uncle to the airport. And so when I came back from the airport, it was like 6 a.m. I was like, I'm not going to sleep because we have the show in 2 hours. I'm just going to stay up. And so I happened to be awake when this Moderna cancer vaccine news actually came out. And I don't think I've ever made $6,000 in a minute. 658 buy 1,000 shares at 91. At 659, sell 1,000 shares at 97.60. I mean, I've had some good trades before. I don't think I've ever made $6,400 in a minute. And that's the benefit of being, and now if I held, it would be worth 40,000, which also, would have been a really fun morning. But, if you wake up early, you get to see, dude, I was ready to sell at 92. I swiped up It was already up $1,000. I was like, shit, $1,000. That's good enough for me. It just happened to fill at 97. I was like, oh, that's really nice. And then I just watch it just go up and up. And I'm like, I'm not chasing it now. There's no way I'm chasing this shit now. That's done. If I try to buy it at 115, it's going to flop all the way back down to 98, which it did. It came back to 98, then it went back up to 130. I don't know what to make of Moderna because, look, it's a really good headline on this cancer vaccine that's succeeding in phase 3. However, there is someone who understands this company way better than me on X. And what he wrote is that the price action makes no sense because a phase 3 win was fairly likely given the clear efficacy shown in phase 2. So the real challenge is scaling the personalized therapy into a $10 billion franchise to justify a $40 billion valuation. This company does not have a massive $100 billion valuation. It was at $25 billion yesterday. At the end of the day, between 25 and 100, basically nothing has changed. If anything, CMV failed and novo virus is at risk. We'll see how it plays out. But looking back, this person who sold some of his Moderna said he would make the same call to sell and redeploy into better opportunities. So he bought it back in June of 2025 when the stock was at 27. So he's obviously done very well on this. But the stock pushing 130 right here on late stage trials being effective does not mean that it's going to turn into a business model. It's just, wait a second, if it's a personalized cancer vaccine, I think the market's just like, they're probably going to figure out how to turn this into a very profitable business. Ironically, Merck is not getting that much love. So if you were trading this early in the morning, betting on Merck would have given you nothing. I mean, Merck is up 7%. Moderna is the one that's up 100%. And so you kind of had to go into the momentum, and it was at 60 yesterday. So, even when it propped up to 90, it was already up a decent chunk of the day, now up about 88% at 118. I think this could be a very easy short when the market opens. If a lot of people are just like, this is good news, but this is not like news that should, make the company worth double what it was yesterday. Or it could be a really easy long if the volume just says, we're buying this thing because no company has ever developed a personalized cancer vaccine before. But I don't know enough about biotech or the industry to be able to make that call. So it's one of those things where I think there's going to be a lot of volume going into this name today, and we're going to see what happens. But that's a massive move on a relatively large biotech. It's not, a $500 billion company. And so you're seeing that 80% move right there on Moderna. For those that are just joining, MRVL, again, they got an agreement with Google, not only to supply services for their TPUs, but also for Google to buy 7% of the company at $207. And as a result of that, you are seeing a massive, massive move on MRVL right there as it's continuing to get a lot of excitement from this partnership. And MRVL should be. I mean, if Google's ready to buy 7% of your company, I mean, forget the price they're buying it at. The fact that Google's ready to buy Google must be thinking MRVL is one of our most important suppliers, and we need to be able to financially backstop and commit to them so that they can continue doing what they need to do for our TPUs. That's a pretty big endorsement from Google. And it's not a lot of money for Google to spend to be able to have that committed, which just goes to show the amount of money and infrastructure that's going into this compute race as Google commits pretty heavily to MRVL. Again, Broadcom doesn't like it because Broadcom is seen as like the core Google supplier. The stock will probably be weak today based on those headlines, but I do not think that changes any of the fundamental story of Broadcom. In fact, they already said this 3 months ago that Google was diversifying. They already took their drop on this 90 days ago on that headline. So that headline coming back mixed with some of the other reasons why Broadcom sold off over the past couple of weeks is probably why this name will have some weakness today. NVIDIA, that's up about 0.6%. Tesla's up 0.17%. Then Amazon is up 0.64 as well. Yeah, I mean, maybe Jensen called the winner right here. And maybe Jensen knew that MRVL was going to be very, very important. Now, look, it's nowhere near $1 trillion company, but it's also not like a $50 billion company. I mean, it's going to open up on that $220 billion market cap. And it was much higher back in July. So now if MRVL gets into the 300s, it's probably going to be based on something fundamental, right? Versus just hype. And I think that's obviously a good thing. And, the market will likely be excited to give them that premium if it gets there. So let's talk about the news that I thought I was going to start off the show with. But we had so many things happen in the pre-market that I did not get to start off the news with this show, the show with this news, which is Openai. Openai is the one that we've got to look at. Vlad was also on CNBC. We'll take a look at what he said in a second. He wrote an article yesterday about tokenization eating the financial system. I 1000% agree with him. I think we are getting very close to either the Clarity Act being passed or legislation from the SEC becoming finalized on tokenized equities and tokenized stocks, because the way that I'm just seeing news come out into the ether around tokenized stock products, it makes you feel like you're going to have some real legislation on it soon. And obviously Robinhood, Coinbase, all these companies want to be big players if this happens. The reason why the dollar is down right here, for those that didn't hear, or if you're just joining, the US Treasury is going to backstop 10, 20-year, and 30-year nominal coupon securities, aka bond yields or bonds, which will create more liquidity for the bond market, which is why the dollar's taking a little bit of a beating right here. But B, it's going to create another buyer for these 10-year yields that have been exploding along with these 30-year yields, 4.65. This was pushing 4.75 yesterday. That is, I think, the main reason outside of some of these AI headlines why the S&P flipped green today. You basically got Besant saying, hey, through September 9th from November 4th, we are going to be refinancing and increasing our buyback capacity to improve dealer balance sheet flexibility and support trading liquidity and targeting long-dated bonds. If we get these yields to come down, market will like it. This was kind of inevitable. The reason they were buying yen, the reason they're supporting buybacks for the 10-year, like this needed to happen. This will make the dollar weaker, which is important because the dollar was getting pretty damn hot over the past couple of days, which is why, stocks have started to at least wonder what's going on in the credit markets. And so it's a smart move by Besant. The implication is they could have some more inflation, but as long as that gets under control, hopefully with oil prices going down, then this is probably a net positive for the bond market and obviously net positive for equities as well. Real quick, before we get into OpenAI, the other big news today is Palantir is having another institutional sovereignty bootcamp. They posted this today. Alex Karp said, AI sovereignty is perhaps the paramount issue of our time. Palantir's products serve as the foundation of our partner sovereignty over their alpha, their data, their insights, their telemetry, and the training and ownership of their models. As you can see right here, 200 organizations in nearly 30 days have joined these bootcamps. I was at the first bootcamp a couple of weeks ago, and it was a pretty incredible experience. You've got some pretty big names on this press release. USA Today, Zeta Global, NATO, NVIDIA, Cisco, McCarthy, Shark Ninja, Freedom Mortgage, Ondas, Rackspace, Tampa General, HCA Healthcare. I mean, just a ton of companies that are signing up to these boot camps, primarily because I think they're recognizing the necessity to govern, orchestrate, and manage their own data and not let the frontier labs steal their IP and just give them tokens. So Palantir is on the right branding of this message, and obviously they're delivering results for their customers, which is why these companies are continuing to come back and attend these boot camps. But the fact that 200 organizations are ready to get into the world of institutional sovereignty in less than 30 days just shows how important this messaging is and how important the results from this product is becoming. And so you're seeing a lot of that value and momentum right there for Palantir. Now, OpenAI, what did they say last night and what did the market get upset about? So officially, revenue grew to $6.7 billion at the end of Q2, up 18% Q over Q from Q1's $5.8 billion in revenue. This was a disappointment. There's no way to sugarcoat it. This was a disappointment. The market did not think they would only grow 18% Q over Q, considering that their operating expenses, their operating losses outpaced the revenue growth, growing from $9.3 billion to $12.3 billion. Anthropic, at the same time, by the way, doubled their revenue to $11.6 billion. And obviously their revenue run rate is now massively exceeding OpenAI's revenue run rate. This chart right here kind of shows you the accelerating revenue year-over-year growth. The orange is Anthropic, the blue is OpenAI. Around March, which is really when Claude Code started taking off, that's also when the SaaS apocalypse happened because everyone thought that Claude was going to kill all these SaaS companies. That is when Anthropic started taking the lead. So why was this concerning last night, and why did this get the market to be so upset? And why did semiconductor stocks sell off? Effectively, OpenAI has a lot of commitments of CapEx. And if they are not growing fast enough to be able to commit to those purchase orders and pay Oracle and Microsoft and Google and Amazon all the money that they're saying that they're going to pay them, the market's like, all right, once again, we have this issue with where these companies are completely unsustainable in their business models. The cost for tokens are going down dramatically. So why are we giving these companies a premium? Why the hell will we pay multiple trillions of dollars for something that is effectively commoditized when these companies are barely even growing? I mean, $7 billion in a quarter is phenomenal. Any startup would be happy for that. But, OpenAI needs to be growing magnitudes above that level, Q over Q, just to be able to justify the level of compute expenditures that they're committing to. That's the bear case. Having said that, I don't think that's the biggest bear case or enough of a bear case for the market to be upset, which is why we're kind of seeing the rebound. And there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one is that, well, the first thing is that OpenAI in July
the CFO said, look, the revenue we did in the month of July was more than the revenue we did in Q2. The numbers we got last night was Q2. So if the numbers we got last night were Q2 numbers and the revenue that they did in all of July was more than Q2, why did that happen? Obviously, GPT 5.6 Sol came out in July, which was their competitor to Fable 5. That's where I think OpenAI needs to be judged with. Again, you don't have to be a fan of the company. You don't have to be a fan of Sam Altman. But at the end of the day, this is a very important company. Stocks you're probably invested in have some implication or direct or indirect tie to OpenAI. So being able to judge them more accurately on their level of growth and giving them the benefit of the doubt that, like, you know, maybe that growth wasn't there explicitly in Q2, but we know AI demand is accelerating, obviously, with all the earnings that we're seeing. It's not like OpenAI selling you a bill of goods that doesn't exist. It's like all the companies that we follow, Nebius, CoreWeave, TSM, MRVL, ASML, the earnings are fantastic. So if the earnings are fantastic, that means that money is coming from somewhere. And the reason that money is coming from somewhere is because there's some type of demand in the ecosystem, whether it's going to OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, Amazon, et cetera, for this compute. And so I think judging them more accurately from July's GPT 5.6 Sol ramp up is going to make a lot more sense going into Q3, which I think is one answer already to the OpenAI bear case that people were concerned about last night. Number two, and I think this argument's really important to understand, like, OpenAI doesn't need to be profitable. They can go the next 5-6 years without being profitable. All that we care about is they continue to spend on compute. Would I like them to be profitable? Yeah, but I'm not invested in OpenAI. I'm also not invested in Anthropic. So the direct implication of OpenAI bringing a profit to the bottom line really doesn't affect me. What affects me and what affects all of us, because I don't think a lot of us here are invested in OpenAI or Anthropic privately, is that the companies we're invested in continue to get the money from OpenAI and Anthropic, whether it's cloud computing from Google or whether it's Marvell for custom chips or Broadcom, until those companies figure out how to become profitable. And you've got to believe enough in the broader AI ecosystem that those companies will figure it out over time. It might take a lot of time, which is why those companies might not be the best investments, but that does not mean their capital expenditures are not going to be going into the ecosystem. And so if that money is still going into the ecosystem, this is the classic. Amazon was not profitable for 15 years. But they grew, there was a real business, they built market share, and now they're printing money like crazy. If that happens for the Amazons of our generation, like OpenAI and Anthropic, that's not Uber. Uber, it took them 15 years, same as Amazon, to actually turn a profit. It was really like 3 years ago where they became GAAP profitable, and it was barely any GAAP profit. And now they're printing $15 billion of free cash flow. So a lot of this stuff takes time. I don't think the ultimate bear case is that they're not profitable. I think the bear case is there a path to profitability? And that's what the S1 is going to let us know. And if there's no path to profitability, investors aren't going to buy the stock. And, those companies ultimately are not going to be able to succeed in the public markets. But I think if they show that path, then it's not the worst thing in the world if they're not fully profitable. Final thing on OpenAI is, let's assume the worst case scenario, which is they fail. They can't pay for their purchase commitments because the tokens aren't profitable and they don't have a sustainable business model. The demand for compute is not going anywhere. It might not be coming from OpenAI, but if OpenAI is not the winner, guess what? There's going to be a lot of enterprises and a lot of consumers that are going to need compute, because it's not like you're putting AI back in time. Like, everyone's going to keep using these models, and these models are only going to get better and better, which means that demand is just going to shift to a different company, whether that's Anthropic, whether it's Grok, which, by the way, the Grok bot is starting to really get a lot of attention. People are calling it the next kind of Claude Code moment for AI. And so if that demand just shifts and the supply continues to remain via all the AI picks and shovels names that, like, you're still going to need memory. Even if OpenAI can't afford the memory chips, like, someone else is going to buy Micron's HBM. I don't think it fundamentally or terminally means that the semiconductor trade or AI trade is done. So I think people got a little too excited last night about those OpenAI numbers not being as good as expected for the three reasons we just talked about. And the fact that the market is kind of shrugging it off right here. Now, maybe when the market opens, there's a little bit more pain because it's starting to internalize those numbers. But a variety of different headlines have come out. Google's not buying 7% of Marvell if they think this whole thing is fake, right? If they don't think token generation is real, if they don't think that AI is going to ultimately deliver an ROI. So I think we've got to give OpenAI the time to get there. But even if they don't get there over the next few years, the compute purchases that they are committing to, as long as the growth is accelerating with those purchases, then I think they're going to be good for that compute. And then obviously that'll be good for a variety of companies that are in the space. Robinhood right there, that's up 2% right here in the pre-market as well. Again, CoreWeave, Nebius, I ran, they were all down pretty ugly. I was up at 4 a.m. These stocks were not looking pretty, and you started to see a shift. The other reason why you start to see a shift outside of the Treasury news that we talked about and the Marvell Google news, which got the market excited, is this right here. I did not buy For those that are asking, Moderna, I traded Moderna in the morning. I do not have a position in this right now. I don't know enough about drugs or biotech to even analyze the press release that we got today. So I traded it in the morning, but I would be a little careful with Moderna, dude. When it opens, it could either have a massive dump if people are just like, dude, up 100% in a day, I'm out. There obviously have been shareholders that have been holding the stock for a while. Or you could get a bunch of people saying, well, this is the biggest cancer vaccine we've ever seen. We're buying in. But I think a lot of the move has already happened, right? So I think with Moderna, it's just something you got to be careful for. If you don't understand even the type of drug they created today, because most people don't analyze biotech that well, then I would probably stay away until you fully grasp what they've done, which we've seen this happen in biotech a lot of times. Companies have a drug, it works well, phase 3 trial, everything goes good, and then the stock just dumps because the market's like, all right, well, where's the business model behind this? And I think that's what it's basically happened with COVID. COVID vaccine, Moderna pumped, COVID vaccine's over, Moderna slumps, and it's been stuck ever since. This was the other big piece of news that happened today. SK Hynix announced a $30 billion buyback. So that came out at around 4:30 a.m. And once that news came out, boom, the market was like, okay, we don't love the Openai news. We don't love that their growth is not amazing, but we also really do love that SK Hynix is giving back money. And the fact that they approved a $28.6 billion share buyback, they're once again agreeing to 50% of free cash flow will be going back to shareholders. They're buying about 24 million shares over the next 3 months. Immediately, you saw SK Hynix go down from 9%. Look at this, 4 a.m., down 9.2%, 415, up 6%. I mean, a 14% swing because of that buyback that immediately got Micron pumping, Seagate, SanDisk, and all your other different players in the semi stack. And so I think from that perspective, you're starting to see a lot more excitement and momentum in regards to how kind of the market is thinking that these companies will eventually give back their free cash flows and eventually give back the excess capital that they're having to shareholders. But the explicit commitments to that, I think, are going to be what the market's waiting for. Also, Micron CEO Sanjay is going to be on with Kramer today at 6 p.m. I think it's either today or tomorrow from their Ohio factory. And if they announce some type of capital repurchase program, the way SK Hynix has announced, which they've already hinted they're going to do something like this, but if they actually say, hey, we're going to give back $50 billion to shareholders or whatever, I mean, that in and of itself could be a reason why Micron could pump. So a lot of the negativity from those OpenAI headlines, they're really not lasting because you have a lot of other pieces to the puzzle as the market is now condensing all this information, one being the Google MRVL news, the other thing being the SK Hynix buyback, and then the general kind of assumption that, look, OpenAI's growth really started in July with GPT 5.6 versus what was happening in Q2, that, we probably shouldn't be that bearish about what's happening right there. But we're going to see. We're going to see how the market interprets it when we open. This could also be a little bit of a pre-market fake out pump. I mean, I can't say it's not. Yesterday, it was an ugly dump. It was probably a needed dump after 2 weeks of going straight vertical. Pre-markets go green. We've seen this story before. It could very easily flip red as the market doesn't have enough juice or volume, quite frankly, to be excited about buying the dip, which, all throughout July, it was very hard to convince the market to buy the dip. All throughout August, you didn't really get a dip, so there wasn't a dip to buy. This is like the first day after an ugly red day yesterday, which is like, does the market really buy the dip? And so far in the pre-market, it's happening, but we have to see if that actually holds through throughout the rest of the day. SanDisk right there, that's up 4% as that continues to go green. Did Moderna use AI to find this cure? I don't know, but that is also a question that I had. In the press release, they did not talk about that. I think this was not something where they trained a custom model to be able to, this is something that they've been working on for a while. And so this was one of those things where if the trial failed, it would be down 50%, right? It worked. It ended up really working. And so I don't think this was AI native. I would imagine in the future, there's going to be a lot of AI optimizations to find successes, but then again, does the stock really deserve to be up 90% today? I think a lot of people will be trading it long and short because there's tons of volume. That's got 10 million shares of volume in the pre-market. It's kind of crazy on Moderna. But I don't know if this means the business should be a $50 billion company versus a $25 billion company. I think you would have to really understand what they're doing with this vaccine to fully make sense of it. And if you don't, then it's hard to kind of buy into the pump in and of itself. So it's a crazy pre-market, crazy pre-market, as we've had a lot of things happen over the past 24 hours. Nebius did dilute, which is why that stock's down 5%. I'll be very curious to see if Nebius can get a recovery since the other neoclouds are getting some level of green back to them in the pre-market. But Nebius right now still down based on, again, Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro signing an executive order to make it really hard for new data centers to start standing up in Pennsylvania. Nebius already has, I think 20% of correct me if I'm wrong, 20% of Nebius's contracted power supply is in Pennsylvania, right? I don't think I'm wrong on that, but if I'm right about that, and Nebius now has to live up to a bit more of a heightened expectation on being able to deliver compute in that state, it just begs the question, how aggressive is the street going to be on perceiving, more advanced legislation on data centers? And so we're going to find out from there. Vlad, he was on CNBC. We'll talk a bit more about Meta because obviously they've been in the news, but this is what he had to say this morning about tokenization.
With which you're describing it first.
Yeah, so tokenization, we're at the beginning of a super cycle, and it's going to take over the entire financial system. Now, a month ago, we launched Robinhood Chain outside the US, and this is our crypto blockchain. And one of the interesting things about it is it includes stock tokens as a primitive, which give tokenized exposure to US stocks. Now, we started with 90 of them. Now we're up to 190. And these trade 24/7. And you can move them around the blockchain like you can Bitcoin or any other crypto asset. And what they really do is give exposure to US stocks to people in over 120 countries. And I think this provides a roadmap for what the financial system can look like. Now, I think tokenization in the US has come up, and I'd say it's broken up into two camps. There's sort of two sides to it. On one side, enthusiasts that just want to get their hands on this new technology, new capability, and they're asking us, when is it coming to the US? What's that going to look like? On the other side, there's people that say, well, we already have simple access to markets here. We have products like Robinhood that provide fractional shares, 24/5 trading. Maybe it's not 24/7. So what's even the point? And so through my post, I kind of outlined the three key improvements on an infrastructure level that can actually impact people's lives in a positive way and make it easier in America for people to become investors and owners of our great economy.
I think it's a big deal. I think tokenization is coming. Again, the main benefit of tokenization, we looked at that stat yesterday, that it's up 800% year to date in terms of the level of volume of tokenized equities that have been traded. It's not about just getting exposure to a stock. It's about creating a new payment on rails and guardrails to be able to trade stocks via the tokenized format of them. And what benefit does that have? There's a variety of them, but the simplest one is it's 24/7. It's on chain, which means it's globally accessible, which is the biggest thing, right? People across the entire world can get exposure to all these assets. And it's permissionless. And so when you have something that can settle instantly, there's no T+2, T+1, which was kind of the reason Robinhood got into that whole GameStop problem. Like, they needed to wait days before the money were to clear, which is why they didn't have the money to be able to backstop all of the trading, which is what had them shut off the buy button. Wasn't a good thing for them to do, but nonetheless, it was the problem with the traditional financial system. If they had instant settlement and clearance, because it was GameStop that was tokenized on the blockchain, which is still 1-to-1 in parity with GameStop stock itself. I mean, it's a massive, massive revolution. I think the NASDAQ understands that. The NYSE understands that. All these traditional financial institutions get that this is where the world is going. And because of that, you're going to have players that try to take advantage of that technology, but you also need the legislation to make sure that technology is real. So I think Robinhood's up right here in the pre-market along with some of these other fintech names, just based on excited momentum that we get real fintech legislation around tokenized equities, and we get it hopefully pretty soon. And I think obviously that would be beneficial for their business, and that's why the stock's up 2% right here. MRVL, again, up 14%. The reason Tempus is up is because Moderna is utilizing Tempus's AI genetic and multimodal data platform primarily through an ongoing expanded partnership with one of Tempus's clinical partners. So not only do you have the Moderna Merck news on the positive cancer vaccine, which is why Moderna is up 90%, but you have Tempus getting into a partnership with one of the companies that was responsible for that vaccine, Moderna, and that's why Tempus is up 15%. So you're getting a variety of these names kind of, interacting with each other. And Tempus has been a big retail name for a while, been a big healthcare name, had a couple of big moves, then ended up getting dipped. Pelosi bought this thing at $25. So there's always been some excitement around this. Kathy's been big on this name. But the type of partnership they announced with Moderna today, you're going to need many of those to get this stock from an $8 billion company to a $50 billion company. But I think a lot of people see the potential of it, as it's kind of one of the only pure play healthcare names that is out there. So that's what we have for Tempus, and that's why it's green. Unitree, they went public in China at a $9 billion valuation. They ended the day at a $60 billion valuation as it went up more than 500%. This was very interesting on Unitree. And the reason this was interesting is because I think this is all hype. I don't think Unitree is actually worth this much money. I don't think it makes sense for it to be worth this much money, quite frankly. I don't know what is that special about Unitree. Like, their robots can run faster than Usain Bolt. That's fine. But is this actually productive inside of a home and inside of a warehouse in order for companies to be able to pay the types of money that would command this company to be worth $60 billion? So I think the real takeaway from this is whatever company in the United States gets public first around the humanoid robotic theme, either they have the massive numbers to justify it. Unitree does not have those numbers, but still it has all this hype, which is why the stock would go up, or it's going to be pure hype. And hype is fine, right? That might create a lot of excitement to trade these names. But if Tesla hasn't really figured it out, if Aptronic, if these companies haven't really figured it out, it means a lot of these companies going public, I think they're doing it more for hype than something real, because, there's obviously not a lot of things that are real yet about robots in terms of being productive. So the fact that Unitree got that much up, I mean, even CXMT, right? I think the Chinese investors have just been starving for a lot of this AI momentum that's been essentially centralized in the United States. CXMT went up 700% on their earning. They actually have a 30x multiple, whereas Micron still trades at 10 times. And then you have Unitree getting this massive multiple today, up, $60 billion market cap from freaking 10 billion. Like, it means that there's a lot of excitement for where AI is going, where physical AI is going, all the components that you're going to need to make sure that physical AI ends up being successful. And that means I can't imagine what happens when the robotic companies that actually have numbers behind them, hopefully in a few years, go public in the United States. I mean, those could be not only some of the biggest IPOs we've ever seen, if it is true that all of those robots are going to need all the parts of the semiconductor manufacturing stack that the GPUs also need, maybe not directly one-to-one proportionally to NVIDIA's GPU supply chain, but MRVL is still going to be important. Optics are still going to be important. Memory is obviously still going to be important. Chips in general are going to be important. CPUs, GPUs, etc. That could just be another tailwind for this broader AI revolution. And we're probably going to see some of that momentum. The only way to get exposure right now is CCXI. It's a SPAC. I do not have a position in this. I kind of am weirded out by this company. I think it's very odd that they're going public via SPAC. I mean, if Unitree can get $60 billion in the public markets, this company can't get a couple billion in the private markets. Like, it's so weird, which makes me think they're only going public because they need liquidity, which makes me think, how come VCs aren't betting on a private robotics play when robotics have all this hype, right? Like, there's just a lot of red flags there for me. Nonetheless, I think it'll probably pump when it de-SPACs because it is a robotics play. Broadcom is down because Marvell got a deal with Google to buy 7% of the company. And Broadcom is one of Google's main suppliers. Again, it's not that big of a deal. Broadcom already mentioned that they're going to be diversifying, or Google's going to be diversifying away from them a couple months ago. But initially, the market saw that as a negative headline. Broadcom right there at 371. It was down 7%. Now it's down 2%. So you're seeing some of a recovery right there. Estee Ladar, this company is also up 30%, or sorry, not 30%, 13%, the pre-market. They crushed earnings. They are green. Target also had a relatively good earnings. Target is down 2.4%. Guidance was a little bit light, but they beat on EPS and revenue. So a lot of these companies are beating earnings. We have a couple of earnings after the bell, but the real headline of the day is this Marvell Google headline, which is helping the market be more excited about AI. This Openai headline around growth that is not as good as the market wanted, but the market, I think, has had 24 hours to kind of digest the news, and they're not that afraid of it anymore. And then you got this SK Hynix buybacks along with the Moderna news. Put all that together along with the Treasury getting ready to buy a ton of more bonds to get these yields down. There you go. You get a green market open, and hopefully we continue to hold on to that green. It is Ladar. For those that I'm saying it wrong, maybe, just maybe you're the one saying it wrong. 9:30 a.m. Wednesday, August 19th, the stock market is now open. right, wake your asses up. Let's get into it. S&P 500 opens at 770. Again, yesterday was ugly. It's going to be really important today to see if we can hold on to the momentum we have in the pre-market and we can get back a lot of what we lost here. But we do open green, 770 on the S&P 500. We have Tempest, that's up 13% on the partnership with Moderna. Moderna up 83%. It peaked at 134 pre-market. 12 million shares within the first 20 seconds of trading. It's going to be very important to see, is there really a floor to this stock? Do people end up just selling it and taking their profits, or do a lot of buyers step in? MRVL up 10% on the Google News. Merck, that's up 8%. Nebius down 7% on a $4.5 billion convertible note that they put out this morning. Meta goes red, 540. We'll talk more about some of the updates on the trial. You had the opening statements last night. Headline-wise, it's not looking good, guys. It's going to be 7 weeks of pretty ugly headlines. Then we're going to get some level of either settlement or potential attribution from the judge that Meta is responsible for this. So we're going to have to see. But Meta right there, 542, as that one continues to go red. Amcor, that's down 1%. SpaceX, that's down 1%. TSM, that's up 1%. Uber, that's down 0.5%. Microsoft, that is down a bit on the day. SoFi gets back up to 18 as we get into the open, 18.10. Robinhood as well. Robinhood CEO was on CNBC, talked about tokenization, 94. The stock got down to like 90 last night. I mean, that's how ugly the pre-markets were. Robinhood's like been at least above 90 for the past couple of weeks. I know it hasn't had a massive breakout, but the fact that it was pushing 90 last night just means sentiment was not the best. 94.34, that's up 2.94% on Hood. Micron up 1.7%. CoreWeave goes green, going the opposite trend of Nebius. Marvell still at 241, that's up 11% on the day. Bitcoin 65, that's probably also helping out Robinhood right there. Paul Atkins came out and put out a video on X yesterday saying that they are very committed to legislation absent Congress's approval on the Clarity Act, which I think a lot of people feel will be approved by Q4, by September through December. It was supposed to happen in August. Again, the House already approved it. I think a lot of people feel it's going to happen in the next couple months. So you got that as a catalyst, and then you got Paul Atkins coming out basically reaffirming that the United States will do everything they need to do to make sure that crypto legislation is going to be secure. And I think that's helping, some of that crypto sentiment. Marvell right there, 243 as that continues to go up, 12.84%. The reason Moderna is up is because of a personalized cancer vaccine they've created with Merck. Stock's up 90% on that news, and it's holding this 119 level as it continues to go green. Tempest was a partner with Moderna, not on this vaccine, but in general, Tempest is announced a partnership with Moderna, and that's why Tempest is up 18%. Accelera, look at that, getting a breakout, up 6%. This has been nothing but blue skies for Accelera ever since their trials went positive. 10x, TENX was down 80% last week. At the same time, Accelera was basically up 80%. It is really a hit or miss. You've got to be betting on the right horse when it comes to biotech. And for those that were betting on Accelera, this one has really worked out. Cerebras, that's down 2%. Bloom Energy gets a little bit of love. That's up 1%. I think Bloom might have some headwinds because if Pennsylvania is basically, not really, but kind of putting a moratorium on data centers, and Nebius has 20% of their contracted power supply in Pennsylvania. Nebius is using a lot of these fuel cell technologies from Bloom. It's all these partners. Bloom has a big partnership with Oracle, but then Oracle has the conflict with Openai on if they're actually going to get paid from them. Like, you have all these different things that I think obviously could be negative for Bloom if the headlines go the wrong way. Bloom's already, a super volatile stock. So it's one of those names where, seeing this below 200 would not surprise me, but it's also one of the only names that is actually showing a different type of energy outside of natural gas that's like working when it comes to data centers. And there's not many companies that have figured it out. Bloom is one of them. So I think that's why it continues to get its premium, and hopefully it can at least hold above that 200, 210 range. Netflix right there, that's up 1.3% as that continues to go green. Palantir, are we green? Palantir, we are green. Palantir's hosting another institutional sovereignty bootcamp today. 200 organizations have attended the previous 2 boot camps in the past 30 days. Stocks at 175. NATO is going to be at their boot camp today. I mean, you've got a lot of big names that are attending it. And so I think the street is excited about that. Uber right there, 75. Broadcom, are we still going down? We are still going down. It's not as bad as it was at the worst of the pre-markets. Hit 359, now 369. But it was down a bit more. So again, I think the market's not as upset as they initially were. CoreWeave goes red. Nebius, are we going to lose 230? We are very close to losing 230. I mean, look, the earnings move on Nebius was basically 190 to 280. I would say, even if this thing goes to 220, you got to be happy. 190 to 220 is still a pretty big move. The problem is if it goes all the way to 220, the beautiful thing about momentum on the way up is it compounds so aggressively on the way down. If it actually loses 220, is this thing just going under 200 again? And if that does happen, I mean, that would be incredible. I don't think it's going to happen. I think this dilution news is, inevitable. This happens with the neoclouds. The market has to digest it and move on from it. Meta below 540 right here. But obviously it's a question of, now the shorts that either double down over the past couple of weeks, continue to double down today and make it tougher for this to move up, or if buyers just get exhausted. I think that's going to be important to keep an eye on Nebius, along with the fact that, they diluted today, which was the reason the stock is down. Meta right there, 538, as that is down from the 540s. Let's check on bond yields. 10-year Lilly hits an all-time high. Wow. 10-year still down nicely on the day, 4.75 to 4.65. I know the Becent buybacks that were announced this morning for treasuries, is not the biggest amount of buybacks, but it's enough, I think, at least for yields to calm down a bit. If yields don't calm down and we rebound back to 4.75, that'll probably be a bit of an issue for equity. SPY right there, 769.78, as that's trying to hold on above 765. Zeta, are we green? Zeta almost green, almost 29. It is green on the day, 2.67%. Micron goes red. That means Corning is probably red. Corning is also red. Are the semis just all going to go down and software is going to go up today? Semis are all red except, well, not all of them. NVIDIA's okay. Marvell's great. ARM is up 3. TSM is up. Software is... Yeah, no, I don't think it's software semi type of... I mean, it's pick and choose. CrowdStrike's down. Twilio's down. Cloudflare's down. MongoDB is down. Snowflake, Datadog is down. So it's different stocks in both sectors that are actually either going green or going red, but it's not in unison with each other. Nebius officially losing 230 as the market opens. It lost 230 in the pre-market. It is losing 230 now that the market is open. 6 million shares traded, 227 as that goes red. SK Hynix, they announced the 30 billion of buybacks. I think that's what got the street really excited. But even SK Hynix losing a chunk of it, 165 to 159. It's only up 2% now. So you're seeing some of these initial moves get faded. Even Robida, 94 to 92. At least it's holding above 90, but immediately you're seeing some of these red candles come in. Estee Ladar, 15% up. Let me get you guys the exact numbers on that company. Incredible company. Kevin Warsh has to be happy because he's married to the daughter of the guy who founded Estee Ladar. But some really good numbers on it as you're seeing the stock get some momentum. Target, they beat by 76% on EPS, by the way, 411 versus 234. And then revenue, 26.5 versus 26.1 billion. So you had a big beat for Target. Stock is down a little bit on guidance. For Estee Ladar, they beat by 6% on revenue. Adjusted EPS is up 100% year over year. Fiscal year guide, 3.1 to 318 of EPS. They're coming in at 335. And then their gross margins also were up at 75.5% for Q4 earnings. 97.29, that's green. Moderna, 99% up, 125.70. Okay, 134 was where it topped out. Let's see if you bought at the market open, you are up. Let's see if this continues. Momentum is pretty aggressive here. $50 billion market cap. As that continues to go green. CoreWeave is falling with Nebius, with Iren, and with Oracle. I mean, look, if Nebius is a 9% day down, then it's really hard for the other neoclouds to be up. That's why I was surprised when CoreWeave and Iren actually flipped green while Nebius was still red in the pre-market. They tend to move in a bucket, even if it's not proportional. If they're all green, they're all green. If they're all red, they're all red. And you're seeing this right now. You can't be serious with that pronunciation. I don't know what to tell you guys. That's how you pronounce it. I know you've been told a lie your whole life on these commercials from Estee Ladar, but there's an actual proper way to say it. It's French. How do you guys not know French? Micron, 935, as that continues to get hit. So a lot of the biotech names are getting the residual love from Moderna. Lilly, 1.2 trillion market cap, up 3.7%. And your AI names are getting the residual hate from from Nebius here as that's going down. Yeah, Moderna's up 304% year to date. I mean, it's outperformed a lot of semiconductor names. But again, you have to really understand what they were working on with drugs and then you have to be right about it. And if you're wrong, the stock will be down a lot. So a lot of times it's a hit or miss when it comes to, it's not about earnings ratios or price to sales or buybacks. Like it's really about does the science work? Netflix right there, 78.95. Netflix has been having a good week ever since the ad sale headline came out last week showing the ad sales doubled. Bill Ackman purchased the stake, so you got some more institutional guys in there. So Netflix getting a little bit more love. Target flips up 4%. It should have been up 4%. Down 2% on bad guidance was not making much sense with the level of EPS beat that they had. So the fact that this flipped up 4% makes sense as that continues to go green. Interesting stuff today. Interesting stuff as we're seeing a bunch of these different headlines converge. Marvell's losing a good chunk of what it had. It was up 15, now it's up 8, but still up 8. Again, Google putting a floor on this stock by agreeing to buy it at 207, I think is just incredibly bullish for Marvell. And it means that, they're really important for Google to want to buy 7% of the damn company. Now, is it $300 important? Probably not. They've got to show the earnings growth, but I think that earnings growth will obviously be there if Google's willing to commit to that. By the way, JP Morgan increased their price target to Nokia to $21, and Zeta increased their price target or Bank of America increased the price target on Zeta to 34. So you got a couple of their price targets this morning that are helping a few of those stocks get some love. Yes, we do have the FOMC meeting later today. We'll get the minutes. It's not the actual meeting, but we'll have minutes. The meeting is on September 16th. So those minutes, usually the minutes don't matter that much. I mean, they matter, but they don't really matter. Today, I think they're going to matter. NVIDIA goes red because, you've got these Fed presidents posting on LinkedIn how much they want to raise rates. If there's a clear consensus majority in the Fed minutes that shows there is a bias towards raising rates, Shopify up 1%. The market might interpret that as like, we're going to raise rates. Now, I don't think there will be because the Fed future probabilities still only have let's see the probabilities today. It was 34% yesterday. If it continues to be at that 30% range, I don't think the minutes should be that aggressive. But if it's not, the market might, it's around 34%. Yeah. So the market will still, have to at least price in some level of not getting a hike. As Nebius continues to fall, 225. See, I don't think the dilution is why this stock is down. Like, technically, that's why it's down. But this type of aggressive selling over the past 2 days, it feels like there's a little bit more to it. Dilution's inevitable. They diluted at 130 back in March. Stock was down, I think, 5% the day, rebounded the next couple of days. I feel like there's a little bit more fear about these data centers and their ability to execute on them. Now, the New Jersey one is going well, but imagine the New Jersey one didn't go well. Imagine that didn't get approved. Where would the stock be? So I think maybe some investors are just waking up to the level of volatility that's associated with the regulatory environment around data centers. The Pennsylvania stuff doesn't really help, given Nebius is so heavily concentrated in Pennsylvania. Having said that, it's also a momentum stock. On a day when it's down 9%, you're just going to get a lot of people getting ready to short it and try to compound the selling right here. Iran, does that continue to be down? Iran is down 3.5. Do you think Citadel is selling? I am very curious to see Citadel's next 13F because I don't know, man. I don't know if Ken Griffin actually thinks he wants that these AI stocks are worth holding on to for the next 5 years and he got them at the cheapest levels you could ever get them at, or he thinks it's a house of cards and he's getting out and going to the bank and running. I don't know. I think they definitely sold some of their positions. They bought $20 billion worth of stocks. They probably had to sell some of it. But do they sell 5% of Nebius in the past couple of days on the run to 280? I don't know. I also don't know how they could have without it being really obvious. Maybe the downfall from 280 to 25 is them selling it. Maybe that's the obvious thing we're ignoring. But we're just not going to know until we get those details. Google, that's right on the day. Google's probably hitting the ATM for sure. I think that was pretty obvious last week. So they're likely issuing some more equity. And probably they're issuing more equity to eventually buy 7% of Marvell right here, 239.40. On Mr. Marvell. Yeah, it was 4.5 billion, which was the dilution. Yeah, it's about 8% of the market cap. That's fair. That's a fair point. That in and of itself could get the market to be a little upset right here. Target is still green. Do we have any macro data today? I don't think we have any crazy macro data. Yeah, the Treasury doubling the debt buybacks was a big piece of news today to kind of get the bond market to calm down. 30-year fell to 5.19. It's the lowest it's been in a couple of weeks. It was at 5.3 yesterday. I mean, like, it worked, at least the initial headline. I think if Trump could come out and officially get a ceasefire, it would really help. But as of now, I think you need something to compound this news. And right now, you just don't have a lot of that excitement or trust from the credit markets that inflation is actually going to come down. Moderna trying to push 130, and this one is not losing its steam. 104% up on the day as this continues to go green. Any news on CrowdStrike? There was a news on Palo Alto, which is probably affecting CrowdStrike. Let me pull it up. CrowdStrike's down 2. Palo Alto launches the Frontier AI Critical Defense Program to protect critical infrastructure from AI-driven exploits using proactive network-level virtual patches. Palo Alto's down 2% as well. Interesting. You would think that's actually positive. So if all of cybersecurity is down, which it is right now, Fortinet as well, then I don't think it's that headline. I think it's something else that's causing that. Yeah, all of cybersecurity. Fortinet, cybersecurity, Palo Alto. If you don't want to buy the cybersecurity stocks, HACK is an ETF that has all of them in it. That's now 1.3 hack. So there might be some other news that's affecting it, but it's definitely not what I just read because that's relatively decent news. One of the representatives, Tony Wyatt, released a new financial disclosure. He bought Upstart up 3%, and he sold ServiceNow, Trade Desk, Salesforce, and Adobe. I don't know when he bought those stocks, but he was definitely heavily allocated towards SaaS. We also had Thomas Keane Jr., who bought Amazon, EQT, ESAB, and Toast. He sold Google and SYK, Stryker. And then you have Richard Allen with a financial disclosure. He bought AMD, bought Broadcom, and then he sold Abbott Labs, ABT. I don't know why our politicians are swing trading as if they don't have other things to do, but that is what's happening. Meta, 542.91. As that continues to go red. Coinbase probably up with Robinhood on that tokenization news. Again, there's not official headlines yet on that, but some of the sentiment around tokenization is shifting, and I think the market's pricing that in and getting a bit more excited for it. SpaceX crashing. Is it actually crashing? Let's see. SpaceX. Whoa, that is okay. Losing 140. Psychologically, not what you want to see. That means Rocket Lab, I'm going to guess. I don't think we've looked at Rocket Lab all day. I'm going to guess it's at 78.50. Okay, that was wrong. 74. Goodness gracious. Ew, that's ugly. 6.3. Look at that. SpaceX is down 3. Rocket Lab's down 6. It's like a 2x levered beta on SpaceX right here. Okay, so the space names going down. ASTS down 4. It was at like 79.50 last time I checked. I was like, all right, it's down another $1. Nope. Yeah, SpaceX really losing it right here. 138.50. Yeah, I can't give you a headline for why these names are down. Again, the main headline I thought this morning that would be the topic of the discussion was the Openai numbers not being better than expected. I went over the reasons for why I think the bears are harping a little bit too much on those numbers not being the best, given July was when GPT 5.6 Sol launched, and that's what really you should be judging by. But at the end of the day, the numbers are the numbers. And 18% quarter-over-quarter growth, you're seeing all the semi-names now just get dumped. Micron down 2%, is not good. Like for a company that has $1.5 trillion in commitments, or actually now I think it's $950 billion. It went down from 1.5 trillion they announced a couple months ago. It was 1.5 trillion though at one point. So like, obviously it had to come down at some point. They do have $120 billion in cash. It's not like they don't have cash. They just raised $122 billion. Nebius down 11 here. But if you're only growing 18% Q over Q, you need to be growing like 80%. You know, you need to be like Anthropic's 10xing their revenue every year. OpenAI is not doing this. So it's like, and again, earlier in the show, I went through all the reasons for why still it's not that big of a deal and the street shouldn't take it as seriously. But that headline in and of itself is just, it's not going to give you a positive reaction. And, you know, you could have some arguments to combat that, but if the market thinks OpenAI can't pay their bills, it's going to create some opportunities. And I think today that's what we're seeing right here with a variety of these names getting hit. CoreWeave down 2.6, SK Hynix barely holding on after that $30 billion buyback announcement, and then Corning down about 4%. IREN under 40. Yeah, I mean, I think if we were actually to go red today, it is going to be on that OpenAI headline. At least I think. I mean, yesterday was a red day. It could just be a continuation of the momentum to the downside. But if you have to put a real reason on it, I don't think it's Iran. I don't think it's bond yields today. I think it's OpenAI. And not only OpenAI, Anthropic was supposed to be doing 75 billion in ARR. They came in at 65. So, you know, once again, it's like, this is why perception is reality on Wall Street. Like, you can't under deliver when the expectations are so high. Still, those numbers are amazing. It's just, they're getting ready to ask the public, you and me, for a lot of money to subsidize all this stuff. And if the numbers aren't pristine, like Elon gets away with it because he's Elon. The numbers could be dog shit. He's Elon Musk. Like, he's, you know, built a lifetime of trust and excitement within investors on just taking a bet on Elon. So he can get away with it. No one likes Altman or Dario. Like, literally no one. I don't know anyone who actually thinks those guys are like personable. So, and a lot of people don't like Elon, but there's a lot of other people that do and are willing to buy his stock. So if these guys aren't, you know, the friendliest guys and their numbers aren't the best, I mean, obviously it creates some downside momentum. And I think that's what we're seeing right here. Rock Lab down 6.3. Yeah, same with Zucks. Same with Zucks, unfortunately. No one likes Zucks. And so, you know, if his numbers, if he wasn't growing 30%, you know, I wonder where the stock would be allocated to versus at this range. By the way, you had Ben Thompson, who is one of the most respected tech journalists. He did a really good podcast yesterday with Invest with the Best. His argument is that Meta is the single biggest beneficiary of AI because advertising is working, but Zucks doesn't want to talk about how advertising is working because no one cares about advertising.
I think a big problem Meta has is they don't tell this story. Like, it's weird, but Mark Zuckerberg has the same problem Sam Altman does. He doesn't love ads. They have the best ad business in the world. They have an ad business that I think is a societal positive. Like, you and I have set up these little content businesses that make great money, but content is kind of, you get a ride on social media, right? I grew up on Twitter, people sharing my links. It was amazing. If you're selling some product, like, the beauty of the internet is there is a niche out there that wants that product. The question is, how do you find the niche? Facebook advertising. That's what it does. It connects, it helps products find the people who didn't even know they wanted that product, but when they get it, they're so happy they got it. And that is tremendous. That's a huge societal positive. You have new business from a new entrepreneur making a new product. You have customers who are happy they got something that they didn't know they would get otherwise. Those customers, by the way, got lots of free entertainment and they didn't have to pay for it along the way. And Meta made a bunch of money for themselves and their shareholders, which is basically everyone in the world. Like, this is why advertising is great, and Meta's advertising in particular is awesome. And I get frustrated that Meta doesn't talk about that. Mark Zuckerberg has never really talked about the societal benefits of advertising, except in passing,
I say,
in 20 years.
And he doesn't want to when it comes to the age of AI, because he wants to make the argument that Meta super intelligence and this AI future where everything's going to be, you know, a massive supercomputer, super agent in your pocket, helping you become more productive. That's the future that Zucks is selling when it comes to Meta, not the advertising future. And if you look at the numbers, the company that's growing the most because of AI, not selling compute and infrastructure for AI, but actually benefiting from using those GPUs to generate increased profits, is freaking Meta. 33%. Like, there's no other company that's growing in AI at that rate. Micron really getting hit right here. Same with Nebius outside of Meta. And this is the company that's performing the worst this year out of all the AI stocks. I mean, it's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. I think part of that is because they haven't doubled down on selling compute, which is, you know, something I do think they should do external to advertising, but they also haven't really told the story of advertising in a meaningful way. So the street's like, okay, ads are cool, but we want something more. And I think if Zucks could actually like just put his foot down and be like, what do you mean you want something more? We're growing 30%. We have 4 billion people using our product and ads are like great. And AI is making the ads better and better and better. And these recommendation engines, like our moat is incomprehensible. No one's going to be able to compete with us now that we have all this compute to make our ads even better. I feel like that could be the story to get this stock a decent multiple, but it's not there. I ran down 5%. And, unfortunately, that's why, Meta's been stuck. And then you put the lawsuits on top of it. It just creates a cascading downfall for them, which is why they're seeing this pain. CrowdStrike down 4%. Moderna 136. Wow. 116. Almost hit 140, 138.95. Nebius continuing to get wrecked right here, down 12%. CoreWeave almost below 90, 3.3% down. There you go, officially below 90, $89. CoreWeave losing the entirety of the earnings pump. And Nebius is basically $20 away from losing the entirety of their earnings pump as well, down 12%. Cypher, Wolf, Keel, I would imagine all of those are continuing to tank. Yeah, Cypher down 6. Wolf down 3. Keel should be down as well. Keel, yep, that's down 4%. So Moderna's the winner today, and MRVL is the winner today. Everything else, is MRVL even holding on to it? Yeah, MRVL. It's actually really impressive for every semi stock to basically fall off a cliff right here, and MRVL to be up. Even Nvidia lost it. But the memory names definitely not loving this price action. Micron getting a bounce off 915 now to 927. Let's see if that can actually flip green as that continues to go red. Corning, unfortunately, is going to fall when all the semis go down. This one trades with all the semis as well. It's in the optic space. That's why it's been up over the past couple of days with Lumentum, AAOI, etc. Does Moderna have a short interest of 12%? Let's check right now. Let's see. Yeah, 14%. I mean, that's not like 30%, but there's definitely, now that makes more sense. There's definitely a squeeze happening. There's no way they can announce positive, personalized cancer vaccine trials that were effective in phase 3 and for you to hold your short. Because like, even if you think the company's not worth 122% more than it was yesterday, if you were shorting at 60, company's probably not worth just 60. It's probably worth like at least 10, 15% more, if not more than that. So this is either an epic short that's going to collapse, or the shorts are going to have to cover this right here and try to make sure they don't continue to be burned on this name. Caterpillar does follow the AI trade as an industrial. The long-term alpha on Caterpillar down 2% right here, I kind of think is gone. I mean, look, this was an amazing name. It's done very well. Over the past 5 years, it's up 300%. This is not a name that usually uses like that. Over the past year, it's up 97%. I don't know. Similar to AMAT, Applied Materials, KLAC, if these names can, 2-3x from here. But in 2023, shout out to Dougie. Dougie was in the chat talking about Caterpillar and how important they would be when it comes to helping build these data centers. I mean, it's worked. And it's done very well. But again, these industrial names, it's tough for them to, be priced for perfection and still get more momentum. This thing was $1,000 in June when everything, really, really topped. I think it can get back there, but if it gets back there, it's going to have to get back there with fundamentals, and it's going to take some time. But it does follow the AI trade. You got MRVL right there, 232. As that's green. Any news on Celestica? Well, Celestica is involved with Google when it comes to TPUs. I don't know if the MRVL announcement with Google is potentially bad for Celestica, as in Google is, more aggressively working with other suppliers. I wouldn't imagine it's as bad for them as it is for Broadcom, even though it's not technically bad for Broadcom, but Broadcom's still down 5%. So maybe that's part of the reason why that's down 3. Any thoughts on Vistra? A lot of the big guys are buying it. I have to look more deeply into them. A lot of these energy names I need to spend more time with. But yeah, Peter Thiel bought. Gavin Baker bought. So you are getting some of those guys. Again, it's the name. Apple's up because growth is down. Once again, you buy Apple when the market is really afraid of the AI trade falling off, and you sell Apple once the AI trade comes back. I mean, it's almost seen as if it's not considered as an AI trade. But nonetheless, that's how the price goes. This is what Ben Thompson had to say yesterday about Apple's role in AI.
I think it's possible. I also think it's totally valid for Apple to double down on what they do. The other thing about the AI stuff is, on what basis should we expect Apple to be good at this? Like, just into like at the most crude level, AI is this probabilistic endeavor. Apple is the king of deterministic products. Like a physical product, you ship that iPhone, you ship it once, and it's got to be good. If it's bad, it costs you billions and billions and billions of dollars. Apple's never had an iPhone recall, which, if you think about it, is actually, it's amazing. And that the sort of care and decision making and diligence and, you know, fierceness in terms of your supply chain and like making hard decisions is very, very different than everything that goes into like making great AI. And I'm generally prefer companies to do what they're good at. So from my perspective, I'm fine with Apple not doing AI. I want them to keep making great devices.
I think that's fine. I just think there's going to be a limit to the overall consumer excitement for devices. Again, the iPhone 17 worked because we're in a upgrade super cycle. I don't know if the iPhone 18, iPhone 19, iPhone 20, without anything meaningfully attached to the AI part of that business or part of that phone, is going to lead to a super cycle upgrade. So if we don't get a lot of people upgrading because, you know, their old phones have turned really old, if seller up 6%, Palantir loses a lot of its momentum, 175 to 171, then they're going to need to venture into, you know, making the phone actually productive in a world of AI. Apple up 2.2% right here as this continues to go green. Trump did pause the tariffs for Canada. This is also a good piece of news we got last night. So, you know, even this news wasn't enough to overcome the negative sentiment on those OpenAI numbers. This also makes me continue to believe that Trump is going to eventually end this thing with Iran, because he was talking all this shit about Canada last week, and then last minute, I have paused the 50% tariffs against Canada that were scheduled to kick in tomorrow, subject to the finalization of documents for a deal. The great Keystone XL pipeline, long ago killed by sleepy Joe Biden, may be awoken from the grave. Thank you for your attention to this matter. I mean, I don't think he actually wanted to put 50% tariffs on Canada. Like, we've seen this playbook a billion times at this point. And I just feel like the same thing's going to happen with Iran eventually. It's just been, you know, lasting for a lot longer than people thought. But at some point, there's going to be a tweet that Iran and the U.S. have come to an agreement and we're going to move on from this. Celestica below 300. It's just, who knows when that's going to happen. CNN reported yesterday that Trump has basically been privately negotiating with Iran, but the reason he keeps publicly saying we're not talking is because Iran keeps publicly saying we're not talking, and he doesn't want to look stupid by saying that we're talking when Iran is denying that we're talking. So the reason Trump tweeted that we're not talking to Iran is because he doesn't want to make it seem like we are. The fact is, there are conversations, and Trump has now instructed, based on the reporting last night, all of his top administrators dealing with the Iran negotiations to not budge from their position. And at this point, the ball is in Iran's court for them to accept the offer or not. And time will tell to see if they actually accept it. If I'm Iran, I probably want to cause more chaos and I don't accept it, but maybe the offer is really good. And it's like, okay, we have some real leverage and some capitulation we got out of the US. Maybe that leads to some more excitement. But until then, the market's stuck with this uncertainty. AMD down 4. Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, those are your green names today. Netflix above 80. I mean, the market's going to go back to some of these basic companies when Bloom Energy and Cerebras and Fastly are down 7 to 8% today. Microsoft even getting a little bit of a bid, as you're seeing it right now. Yeah, SPY's actually up while the NASDAQ is. I mean, dude, the NASDAQ usually like correlates with the S&P, not exactly, but the NASDAQ has become incredibly more volatile compared to the S&P. The S&P has healthcare and financials and pharmaceuticals balancing it out. Some software. The NASDAQ is just straight up semiconductors, AI. And it's either going to work or it's not going to work. Tesla 338, Amazon 260. Did you trade Moderna today? Yes, I happen to be awake. It was the quickest $6,000 I've ever made. I do not think I've ever made $6,000 in literally a minute. I wish I held. It would have been $50,000 if I just held. But dude, like when it was going up, like 658, and then at 659, you see that you're up $6,400. Like, I don't care who you are, you're taking that money. because who knows if it was already up 50% when I bought it. So in my head, I'm like, this thing could easily collapse. And then the second I sell it, I proceed to watch it go up into the 120s. And now it's at the 140s. It is what it is. But I don't even know what the hell I was trading, right? So this one was like purely just momentum. And I don't know when it was going to collapse, but obviously the market is very happy about these trials. So there you go. I don't know if it's like, I don't know if you can invest in this right now or even trade it. Like I think you have to know something about this drug to hold on to this, buying it up 125% on the day. If not, then you're just like betting that they'll create a business out of this, which maybe they will. But if they don't in the short term, then, you know, the stock's going to end up taking a hit. Bloom right there, losing 200 as that continues to go down. Reddit also losing its entire S&P pump. This is part of the other reason I sold quickly. I mean, these names lose their momentum so quickly on catalysts. Now, this was a pretty big catalyst, but nonetheless, it was already up 50%. Like, how much more could it go? Well, it had another 50% to go as you're seeing it up 100%. But some of these names, they just, you know, they get some juice. MRVL, you kind of have to sell at 247 to really get some love. Still up 7%, but it bounced from 211 to basically 250. Like, if whoever bought it at 247 is probably a bit upset right now, thinking it was going to 260. A lot of the stuff is just get in and out. And then you move on. Estee Lauder, is that one still moving? Yeah, 17%. Dude, this has got to be the best day for Estee Lauder in a while. Dylan said I made like 20K on the Allbirds pump. Yeah, that was another name where you kind of needed to not be greedy and just take your profits immediately. Now it's back down to $2.45 right there. When is the last time Estee Lauder stock was up 20% in a day? Oh my goodness. 2 times. 1995 IPO and then 2011, November 3rd. This has not happened in a long time. What did they say on their earnings that got the market this excited about makeup? I mean, these numbers are good, but they raised their fiscal year guidance. That's fine. Where's Elf then? Elf's got to be up, right? Elf's up 5. Ulta should be up. Ulta's up 4. Okay. AI makeup, yeah, like, I mean, the numbers are 5% year-over-year growth. Sorry, 6%. I don't know if that's like the most exciting. Yeah, they increased their EPS by 20 cents, but that's not like multiple dollars of an increase on EPS. Micron's still down 1.3. Good for the consumer. That's fair. It's good for the consumer. Consumer continues to spend, even if some of the data is contradicting that. These companies, I mean, they're showing that, I mean, businesses aren't buying makeup, consumers are, right? So if that's the case, you're seeing that get benefited in these companies. Let's hear from Mohammed El-Iran on this Treasury backstop and get some of his perspectives. This is part of the reason why I think bond yields are at least somewhat coming down and helping the index stay up.
It had problems. You could have a Fed Treasury compact that will raise issues about the Fed. So whichever way you look, these YCC measures are not a free lunch at all. Fundamentally, we are betting on higher growth rate in the future that will allow us to afford all this debt issuance that's happening on the corporate side and on the government side.
And do you think with Atlanta Fed in the 4s for the current quarter, we're getting there? That growing out of it thing?
You know, I look at earnings as well as what the macro data tells me. And today we got conflicting signals. We got Lowe's warning on the one hand that they are seeing macro headwinds. We got Target saying, you know what? No, we're seeing this as tailwinds. So I think this is a solidly growing economy. It can be derailed by one of 2 things. One is a financial accident. And just keep an eye on leverage. Leverage is a big issue. And 2, the low-income household. They are under enormous pressure.
Leverage is a big issue?
You know, it tends to be in places we don't see it. That's the problem.
Now you sound like Diamond.
Yeah.
No. I mean, all of us remember what happened in the United Kingdom. New government comes in, announces unfunded tax cuts, yields go up, and next thing you know, you have a pension system problem. No one thought the pension system was in play, but there was enormous leverage in parts of the pension system. That's the trouble, is you don't know. What we do know is there's a tremendous amount of leverage in the system.
What was that? I mean, I think it was last week. I follow you on social.
And again, a lot of that leverage did get wiped out. But the problem is, and I think part of the reason these bond yields are being kind of ugly, Micron, goodness, dude, any bounce getting faded right back to 922, is that the hyperscalers are loading up on so much damn debt that it's making the market think that there's a ton more leverage that's entering into the ecosystem, even with Leopold getting wiped out. Leopold's leverage was like, margin debt, whereas the leverage from the hyperscalers is not necessarily margin debt, but it is still money that's borrowed, which is why it's leverage, and it's being deployed into these data centers. By the way, speaking of margin, like July really took people out. Margin debt over the past month, after trading at an all-time high, came down by $85 billion in July. 1.42 trillion. It was trading at close to 1.55 trillion. Nebius 214 as that continues to go down. This is the first monthly decrease since March. The second biggest monthly drop was in January 2022, right before the bear market started. This was higher than January of 2022. The difference in 2022, once again, is we were raising rates. That's why we got into a bear market. We are hopefully not raising rates this time. But we added 200 billion in margin debt in May and June. So you had a lot of people go. I mean, that is why June became so explosive. You just had so much leverage into the system. And then July ended up wiping all that out. So this is a healthy thing for that margin to get out of the system. But it also begs the question, this 2-week August pseudo recovery we had, if people were like, okay, cool, we're back to normal, I'm going back into margin, and then we get wiped out again, maybe not as aggressively as July, but like, Micron was $1,000 yesterday. If you took out margin to buy it at 970, you were up 1,000, you're happy, and now it's at 917, and now you're down on the money and you owe money back to the broker. Like, it's one of those things. What happens if Micron actually goes down to like 885 or something? Does that create another margin call? Does that create even more selling pressure? And I think the bond yields are starting to recognize some of that fear as well, or the credit markets, I should say. And that's where we're seeing a lot of these prices go in the wrong direction. So it's one of those things where we got to figure out, exactly how much leverage continues to be in the system. I mean, Nebius has a what? Almost 100% move or 70% move in less than 3 days. I mean, you're going to get a lot of people seeing that and borrow money to buy shares because they're going to assume the worst was baked in. And I mean, 280 to 215 is a pretty ugly drop. So a lot of those shares are now underwater. And if they're underwater on margin, once again, it just compounds the argument that there's still too much leverage in the system. Meta right there, 546. As this is slightly green. How much would you be up on Moderna now if you held? Probably like 50,000. It would have been stupid, dude. There's no way I would have held it, though. There's no way. Like, no way in hell I would have held it. Like, I know myself. Dude, if something's up 30 cents, I take profit. Like, that's one thing I'm really good at. When if I'm actively trading, if I see a profit, I take it. There is no way I would have held Moderna for the past 3 hours. I wish I had that type of patience, but there's just no way. I would have been afraid every single minute that it's just going to collapse. I don't have that risk tolerance. But for those that took the bet, I mean, that's also probably sucking up some liquidity from the AI names because all this money is now going into pharmaceuticals, as that's getting a lot more love. My cash guard puts on Nebius at 250 or underwater. What is your strike for that? I also think there was a decent amount of put selling on Nebius around that 230, 250 range. And unfortunately, those are underwater right now. So that is fair. That's fair. I could have had a stop loss as well. I mean, I've used those before. It's just, when you have that much momentum and volume, I feel like the goal is to get in and out and be grateful for what you have. Right? That's the one thing about trading. It's like you make a profit and then the stock keeps ripping. And the thing that haunts you is like, oh, I could have made more. But in the moment, you didn't know if the stock was going to keep ripping, especially when you know nothing about this drug or this company. You just happen to be awake at the right time and see the news. So a lot of it's just being, grateful for the profits and moving forward. Keel below $3. That's down 5%. MRVL is losing a lot of this freaking pump. Nebius covered calls should be printing. CoreWeave covered calls should be printing. I know a decent amount of people at least sold calls on their position over the past couple of days. The premiums were ridiculous. I mean, they were paying $40 for a 270 call 1 month out. I mean, your exit would have been basically $310. Like, it's unbelievable, that amount of volatility, but that at least should be offsetting some of the losses. Apple almost 318 as that continues to go a bit higher. Jose says I have a covered call at 180. Dude, who knows, man? I don't think. All right, put in the chat right now. Gut check. Nebius loses 200 in the next month. Put in the chat, yes or no. What do people think? Yes or no? Why is gold up? I think it's because yields are down. Gold is now trading with risk on assets. Gold has been doing really well over the past couple of weeks. So it makes sense that gold is up if 10-year treasury and 30-year treasury yields are down. Yeah, I think people are just probably buying gold. Also, Bank of America came out, not Bank of America, JP Morgan came out yesterday. Let me see if I can get the clip. And they said to buy European equities, treasuries, and gold in this market uncertainty. And so you have some of the institutional guys, touting that gold should be the safe haven in the midst of uncertainty around the war and then uncertainty around what's happening with treasury yields. Nebius 216 right here. Wow, 420 calls on GLD, the ETF for gold, 7.8 million of inflows. Goodness gracious. It's a lot of call volume coming in. I think it's 50-50. I see a lot of yeses. I see a lot of nos. I think it's 50-50 on if this actually falls below. ETH, are we getting some love? ETH 1930, that's up with BTC. How many people own gold? Like, do people care that much when gold pumps? I own 0 gold outside of the Robinhood Gold card. I mean, if people really care about gold, we can track it more heavily. But I didn't think a lot of you guys actually, like, I mean, gold is one of those things you buy and it's just like, it's there, right? Like, it's not one of those things you like look at every day on, like, if it's going up or down, right? That's how I've thought about gold, silver, maybe copper, a little bit different because it's getting a lot more attention in the data center trade. But I've never thought about gold as like something people actively, I know people actively trade it, but it's not something I think like retail cares that deeply about every day. I know I'm Indian, but I still don't own like a gold ETF or anything. You know, there's actually a real good clip on the compound. The reason there's a gold, have you guys ever wondered why there's not a freaking crude oil ETF that you can easily buy instead of having to buy the futures contracts to track crude oil? It's complicates it. Obviously, you can buy a stock that's like a proxy to crude oil and stuff like that. But the reason for it is because you can store gold. So because you can store gold, like, that is why you have this massive gold ETF that allows all these inflows from retail investors.
But you're talking about managed.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is, like,
you're just saying a plain
I'm
copper
saying
ETF.
what never worked is, like, I just want an ETF product that will go up and down with crude oil. I don't want to hear about backwardation
But how
ever.
come gold works?
Because you can store it.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Crack the code.
You can't store copper.
So you have to use the futures for, like, I don't know, agricultural products, because you can't store wheat forever. It'll go bad.
It goes bad. Yeah.
That's all it is. That's the whole thing.
As long as you can store it
This
somewhere.
whole time.
This whole time. That's a great answer, though. Why is
You know
gold
what's so
successful
funny?
in
Josh
this?
is going to be saying this for the rest of his
It
career.
just goes in a vault and it just sits there.
I never
Okay.
understood. No, I never understood why they couldn't give me oil and gas or gas.
Yeah, those are harder to store.
All right. Who is working on?
It's hilarious, right? But like, that's part of the reason why it's easy for people to access gold right here. Apple continuing to make its move again. Micron goes down. Apple goes up 317.61 as that continues to go green. Netflix should be breaking 80. I mean, this thing has basically been stuck from 65 to 70. Really, 70 to 75-ish has been the range it's been stuck at for the past 2 months. Yeah, it makes sense. Bill Ackman bought $1 billion of it. I mean, blue chip stock. Now, maybe it's only up today because Nebius is down 14%, but I do think it's probably done with the 60s. And same thing with Uber. I think Uber is probably going to be out of the 70 range soon enough. NVIDIA right there down 1.3%. Zeta up about 2.1. Moderna, wow, 150. That's crazy, dude. 154. Even if this thing falls 30, 40%, it's still going to be up so much for the day. Just a massive, massive move. SanDisk, is that still down? SanDisk down 4. All right, so all your memory names continuing to get hit. Again, Broadcom, I think this is a illogical sell-off, but nonetheless, the headlines are the headlines. They supply Google with a lot of parts for the TPU. Google's working more deeply with MRVL. The market assumes that's bad for Broadcom. And that is why the stock's down 5. APLD is down because all the neoclouds are probably down on the day. APLD down 5%. Mercado Libre is up 3.4. Mercado Libre actually has had a really good run since the earnings. Stock was basically stagnant for almost a year and a half at like $1,500. So we're seeing that breakout. Estee Lauder, that's still up 16%. Palantir flipping green. I mean, this is interesting. It's 2 red days in a row on high beta. The S&P is not really red yet. It's not even close to going red. So yesterday the S&P was down, which is why everything was down. Today it's very segmented into cybersecurity, which I don't get why they're falling off 6 to 7% here. CrowdStrike and Palo Alto. I do not see a headline to justify that. NVIDIA's down 1, and then your semis are the ones that are getting hit the most on the day. Amcor, DigitalOcean, they're down along with Fastly and Akamai. Remember, these names, I don't think there has to be a specific reason for any of them to be down. These are purely algorithmically traded names around AI derivatives. Amcor, Akamai, DigitalOcean, like all these names, the only reason outside of their earnings growth why they have this heightened level of beta is because they're in the AI supply chain. And so, like, you know, if SK Hynix, if Micron are down, those names, it's really hard unless there's a market moving announcement for them to be up. There's nothing specific on DigitalOcean today or Amcor. If anything, Intel said they're going to be using more advanced packaging. So like it's just, a lot of these things move in a pack. I mean, this is why July was so ugly, but this is also why the recovery was so amazing, because they all went up and they all went down at the same time. So I don't think there's a specific reason for any of them. Now, look, the overarching reason for why we're down today is if OpenAI's numbers are not as good as expected, which again was the main headline last night, SpaceX still down 4%. The market once again goes into like their Kimi K3 DeepSeek moment, which is, okay, is this company actually worth $1 trillion? And if it's not worth $1 trillion, how the hell are they going to pay all their spending commitments? Once again, I think there's a lot of counters to that claim, but it really doesn't matter what the counter to that claim is until we get the freaking S1. Until we get these numbers, all this speculation is going to lead to more uncertainty. ServiceNow up 5%. And we need the numbers for that uncertainty to not be that aggressive. Lilly also up 5%. Trump will be delivering remarks with technology leaders at 2:30 p.m. Eastern on Wednesday. I don't know which technology leaders are going to be there, but Trump will be, I don't know if that's going to be live. I imagine it would be live. It might be an Oval Office, might be like a press conference. Who knows? Maybe Jensen's there, maybe Sam Altman's there, but that will also be something that we have to wait for later today. Is Bitcoin running? Yes, Bitcoin is, at least today, getting some love. Are we still above 65? Yeah. Yeah, wow, 65.3. Okay, actually making a nice move. Speaking of crypto and Bitcoin, well, your boy Sailor is having a lot of fun with AI.
Si tu es ingénieur, puis tu tombes sur un lac, tu vois les remous dans l'eau, tu penses à la gravité, puis là, tu te dis, ben, si je construis qu'un bacage, que je mets une turbine dessus, que je fais passer l'eau dedans, que je branche ça sur une centrale hydroélectrique, puis que je fais tourner la dynamo, voilà, je fais de l'électricité.
Oh, wait, there's more.
Wenn Gott sagen würde, ich schaffe 21 Millionen Coins und ich lagere sie in einer Bank im Himmel und ich lasse dich sie jederzeit senden an jeden, so schnell als das Licht, und ich weiß immer, wem was gehört und ich mache das für immer gratis. Klingt das nicht wie Bitcoin?
Oh, wait, there's more.
Bitcoin es para todos. Comparte Bitcoin con amor.
This is why we're spending trillions in CapEx, folks. This is why we are spending $800 billion this year and next year $1.3 trillion in CapEx. It's for Saylor to pump his bags and tweet those videos. But yeah, if Bitcoin actually goes up, I think those videos would be interpreted more positively. As of now, it's just, a little bit of cope. Little bit of cope as we're waiting for BTC to move. I do think Bitcoin's bottom, though. I was talking about this yesterday. With every bad headline we get, Bitcoin doesn't budge. It has been stuck at basically 60K for the past few months. Like with treasury yields and Iran and oil, like you would think Bitcoin should be, actually losing 60, 55, at least 57, 58. It's not. It's holding. It's been holding really nicely. So I think most of the worst news is baked in. Accelera still up 5. Hopefully that's not going to be, something that takes Bitcoin down even further. Wow, Moderna, $162. As that continues to go up. I think everyone's just selling their AI stocks and buying Moderna today. The thing is this company actually worth $65 billion on this phase 3 trial? Like, they have to commercialize that product. Unless the market's just thinking like the value of that product is hundreds of billions, then yeah, it's still cheap. But that's what the market's obviously acting like right now, which is why this is continuing to go green. S&P 500 right there. 769. Again, for the people that are asking why are AI stocks selling off, my reason, I think, is OpenAI's numbers not being as good as the market wanted them to be. And, the market just being upset about those numbers not growing as fast as they needed to. And as long as, they show that growth, I think it's going to be okay. But as of right now, that growth is not as apparent. Don't think it's a reason for it to be sold off this aggressively, but that is what we're seeing. The space stocks are down because SpaceX is down. If you ask me why SpaceX is down, I don't know, because SpaceX actually doesn't have a lot of OpenAI correlation at all. They get paid by Anthropic, so they're not worried about OpenAI compute commitments. I guess high beta in general takes SpaceX down. And so if Micron's down, SpaceX is going to have some pain. SpaceX takes Rocket Lab down and ASTS and all the other ones. Yes, July numbers were way better than expected. It's just that's not the headline. The headline is Q2 numbers, which were way worse than expected. This is why I think the sell-off is kind of stupid right here, because if July's ARR was better than all of Q2, which is what Sarah Fryer, the CFO, said, this is a nothing burger. This is not really a story. But if we had to give a reason to it, I think this would be the reason. If that's not the reason, then it's just momentum following from yesterday's sell-off, which has to do with bond yields and Iran, which I don't think are the main reasons today. But if those are going to continue to be part of why we sell off, then it is what it is. And we might just have to deal with the market being upset about it. NVIDIA, got a headline right here. NVIDIA is reportedly introducing companies with its GPUs to Nordic data center operators with available capacity. NVIDIA is seeking to connect GPU customers needing computing capacity with data center operators able to deploy infrastructure. The region in Nordic offers available power and land, while its cooler climate can support data center cooling requirements. Okay. So NVIDIA continuing to make sure these data centers get online. 218 is what you've got right there. As that continues to go a bit higher, Moderna is absolutely getting squeezed at 160, but I think you're also getting a lot of people just buying in. Zeta did get the price target upgrade to 34. I think there was a good take yesterday on the Invest with the Best podcast on memory. And I think that would be valuable to listen to right here. I largely agree with this. Ben Thompson is pretty bullish on memory, but his argument is also that there is a world in which the memory companies are putting a little bit too much of a target on their back. And that target on their back as a $1 trillion company or as $1 trillion market caps effectively dealing with commodities is why the stocks have been so volatile over the past couple of weeks.
Fixed costs. And this is the whole logic of commodity markets. I think tech in general doesn't understand commodity markets. Tech is by and large focused on, if I produce a highly differentiated product, and that differentiation could be like, software, it could be a network in terms of developers, it could be a social network sort of thing where peer-to-peer, where I'm highly differentiated, then my ability to charge higher prices provides sort of my profit margin. So the classic example is like Apple, right? They have their ecosystem and they have their software and they have third party and all those sorts of things. And so they can have 50% margins on their iPhone. Everyone looks at Apple as like the ideal business model. That's how you run a business. But in a commodity market, the price is set by the marginal supplier.
Cost to serve is all that matters.
That's right. And so I had a good friend in Taiwan who was in shipping. Fascinating industry. It's kind of like the airlines too, another industry that I love to look at. But like you buy a ship and the cost of that ship is depreciation, and your marginal cost is actually quite low. It's the fuel to run the ship and the cost of the crew and like your port fees. Not that much. What that means is you are going to run that ship
as full as humanly
basically
possible.
you're going to run it no matter what.
Yeah.
And you're going to bring down the price of a container as low as it needs to be to cover your marginal costs. Now, your paper losses in this situation might be very large because your accounting loss includes depreciation. But the depreciation is an accounting figment. You already paid the money. And so you're going to run that ship at whatever the market will bear. And the container, the beauty of the container is it is a pure commodity. And so the cost of the market is going to be the marginal cost. Now, if it gets low enough, at some point, people will exit because their marginal costs actually can't, like, they're actually losing money on a shipment, right? Not just paper money, but like actual real money. They will exit, but then the supply is diminished. So then the price will go back up. And you get this interplay of sort of coming in and off. But then let's say the market's very high, like it was during COVID. It's like, wow, we're making so much money right now because there's not enough supply. There wasn't enough supply of ships. So containers went from like usually being like $3,000, $4,000 to $17,000, $18,000. Like the amount of money that these shipping companies made in a very short amount of time was insane. And so what happens though? Well,
more ships.
Imagine if we had more ships, right? The problem is it takes 2 years to build a ship. So if everyone makes this decision simultaneously, then the ship, you suddenly have a lot of ships, price plummets, etc. Where we see this is in components, in memory in particular. Memory, very famous for boom and bust cycles, people entering the market late. But to what extent are data centers going to be memory makers? Where right now, everyone can see we don't have enough compute. So everyone's like, we absolutely have to be investing because there's so much money to make. And look at our payback period. The problem is you're measuring your payback period in a time of scarcity. Is that payback period going to hold in a time of abundance? And the sort of the bulls would say there's never going to be a time of abundance. AI,
we're going to be short
test time
forever.
scaling, we're going to be short forever, which maybe we will be. My concern is even if that's right, we could still have an air gap in that there's so much money going into it right now and not enough has come online to actually make sufficient revenues to handle the situation where we run out of capital. I believe in AI. I think it's a real thing. I think the economic impact is going to be astronomical. I think all the concerns about societal impact are very real and are going to come to bear in a major way. You can believe all that and still be worried about, are we going to make the bridge to this actually generating the level of returns necessary to continue to fuel this sort of going forward?
Can you zoom in on TSMC and maybe the...
And so I think the argument he was effectively making with memory, he goes on to further talk about Micron getting rejected at 932, is once again, there's optimization happening on the private side to not have to use as much memory or to make their memory use even more efficient than what it currently is, which is definitively happening. Grok, SRAM architecture, Cerebrus, like all these companies are trying to go after that. And then you have the general issue of if supply comes online, do prices go down? And that's been the general bear case. Even with those bear cases, these memory names are probably still cheap. But once again, I think implicit in what he's saying is it's a trade. It's not an investment. The idea that you can hold these types of volatile, effectively suppliers of commodities that are living through a supply-demand imbalance that is really on their side, in a side of scarcity versus a side of time of abundance, is what makes the trade work. And whenever we get to that abundance element, which maybe is 2 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now, who knows when that is, the pricing power comes down dramatically, which is why these companies are trying to convince you about long-term agreements. It's why SK Hynix announced a $30 billion buyback, right? They continue to say, this is how we're going to keep the growth sustainable. And the market just has to keep believing it. And the day the market stops believing it is the day, these names end up getting hit. MRVL did a really good job explaining that their sustainability revenues are practical because of getting Google to actually commit to put a floor on the stock at 207 and buy 7% of the company. I mean, who knows, man? It would be kind of funny if Micron gets Jensen to buy 2% of the company or something. But I also wonder if Jensen would want to, because even he knows, like, hey, at some point, I don't know if you're going to be worth $1 trillion when we have more supply. Robinhood breaking out right here, 95, as this also continues to get a little bit more love. Broadcom, unfortunately, still getting hit. Could you say the same thing about NVIDIA? I think you could years ago when you thought NVIDIA was just supplying basic chips, but now it's obvious that NVIDIA has a moat and it's really hard to replicate those chips. But even with that argument, NVIDIA is struggling with this as well because other companies have started making chips. Google with the TPUs, Broadcom with the ASICs. And what's NVIDIA done? It's been relatively flat over the past year. I mean, it's done well, but it's like, kind of been stuck in a range because even the market's like, okay, can you actually hold up these 75% profit margins? And Jensen keeps over delivering, which is why the stock is the most valuable company on the planet. But it's not like NVIDIA has this like unparalleled monopoly where, it's just their world and everyone's living in it. There are real competitors now. And with the memory, it's obviously just more hyper competitive because making it is not as complex as making those NVIDIA GPUs. Duolingo, we didn't talk about this, but they're up 7%. Their user numbers on DAUs, which is part of the reason why the stock was getting hit, got disclosed, and it's up 27% year over year. Yeah, it was accidentally leaked. The headline is Duolingo filed an 8K after an internal screen was accidentally shown during an investor meeting, revealing that DAUs on August 17th were estimated to be up 28% year over year, with similar growth seen in the prior days of August. The company stressed that the data is preliminary and unvalidated and should not be treated as an update to its Q3 guidance. So if they end up, really having some strong DAU growth in Q3, I think the market's just front running it, and that's why Duolingo is at 150. We have diesel inventories. Let's pull that up as those numbers just came out.
15 million barrel build that we did get for the week ending August 7th. But this does speak to a jump in imports at about 6.6 million barrels per day. Now, of course, diesel has been what's in focus. We saw stockpiles drop by 1.5 million barrels. They're now about 13% below the 5-year average. Now, diesel exports did cool slightly here at 1.6 million barrels per day. That is down from the prior week's record of 1.94 million barrels per day, but it's still averaging about 500,000 barrels per day more than last year. And, something to note is that we keep seeing this increase in diesel prices. We've been talking about the record crack spreads for refiners, but it doesn't tell the whole picture, because when you look at the wholesale price for diesel, as Andy Lipow from Lipow Oil Associates notes, in New York, we're talking about $188 per barrel, Chicago, $181, Portland, $185. So these are really record numbers across the board. That is where the tightness in these markets are. And the U.S. has become the supplier to the world now, with not just Middle East production offline, but also in Russia as well. And so here in the U.S., the distillate inventory is now about 13% below the 5-year average. Guys?
Yeah, as they like to say, Pippa, we're not running out of oil. We're running out of ways to turn oil into fuel. Certainly reflected in some of this inventory data. Thanks, Pippa.
Okay, market not caring too much about that new data. S&P basically flat. Again, the U.S. continues to drill effectively. We are one of the largest suppliers of oil. It's just, unfortunately, the Strait is where a lot of that oil goes through. And that is part of the issue that we were seeing. The other thing Ben Thompson said on that pod about the Strait of Hormuz, which I actually thought it made a lot of sense, is that although this is really bad what happened with Iran, it is going to be something that never happens again. Because now, the market knows that there is way too much of a chance for this stuff to happen. He kind of compared what's going on. This is where he kind of compared what's going on with memory to Iran.
The risk they run is Apple's lobbying to get Chinese memory, right? And what is the number one focus of algorithmic changes? How can we use less memory? I think the memory makers probably screw themselves in the long run by creating such a massive target on their back. I've analogized memory makers to Iran. The issue with the Strait of Hormuz is it's very effective. It's more effective if you don't use it, because then it's always hanging out there as something you could do. Now they did it. Turns out it worked. But the UAE, Saudi Arabia, they're going to build pipelines. They're going to build new ports. They're not going to let this happen again. It's very painful right now, but say Iran wants to close the Strait of Hormuz in 2035, it's not going to have any effect because it will have been built around.
Which I think is a net good thing, because we cannot let the Iranians hold 20% of the world's oil supply hostage for the foreseeable future. It is just a massive national security risk at this point. Unfortunately, we haven't completely developed different international shipping routes yet, but this entire situation will likely lead to that eventually happening. Moderna falling from 163 to 151. Some of your first red candles of the day, but still obviously green, up 140%. Netflix up 3, Apple still up 2, gold up 3. The Qs are flat now. Qs getting a little bit of recovery. Micron also 912 to 930. 932 it keeps getting rejected at, or 935-ish. But it is trying. Where is Amazon? Amazon actually getting some love. Again, BMNR above 19. I don't see any news on Tessie. Tessie is actually the best Max 7 today. We talked about the Tesla semis yesterday. Cybercat production. We had some of those updates, but nothing really moving up Tesla. How about Meta? Meta's at 547. Okay, so let's talk about the Meta lawsuit. So the official first arguments were given out yesterday. Gene Munster thinks Meta's dead for the next year. He called Google eBay when Google was dead because of a trial as well. So it's one of those things where I'm like, all right, I understand that he's not the most bullish here, but I'm also just like, is it actually dead for the next year? Definitely for the next 7 weeks, it's going to have a problem. But Google was not dead for the next year. Google rebounded within a couple months and went up 2x. So I think there is a lot of obviously negative sentiment, which is probably what you want to see at these prices. Now, Jason's TA says below 500 is very possible, and that's when you get the big buys. Absolute lows are 350, which I don't think that happens, but obviously if that does happen, it would be some really, really bad headlines. I ultimately think Meta is a very large company. Meta knows a lot of important people. I mean, these lawsuits have happened over and over the past couple of years. I don't think these lawsuits are going to be the depth of them. The question is going to be, how bad is the pain? And there will be some level of pain. It's just how bad does it have to be? Because once the market absorbs it, it's over, and you get to move on. So I think we just have to wait for the next 7 weeks until it's officially done. But I think once that gets priced in, we move forward. This does have kids involved. So obviously, the courtroom is very emotional. You have parents there. So there's that's part of navigating what's going on with Meta. But look, if it were to actually get almost cut in half by going into the 300s, it's hard for me to see it happening. But if it does, then I would imagine it's going to be a buying opportunity. Question is, how bad does it actually get?
Handicapping it, it's really hard to say. There's a lot going on here. I think the arguments made yesterday by both sides each had some merit. I do think that the previous trials that have gone against Meta for similar issues have not gone Meta's way. And so I would say if I had to handicap it, I would say that Meta is likely to lose this trial, but it's not impossible that they could win.
And you say they could lose because what's the rationale?
Well, there's two ways. Actually, there's two ways to win, and there's only one way to lose. But the way to lose is sort of more likely. So they have had really struggled in their last couple trials to say that, like, look, social media addiction is not a thing, and we did enough to the extent that we were aware that there was, young people on the platform, young people struggling on the platform. We really did enough to protect them because there was a lot of evidence that they designed their product to be to maximize engagement, as they phrase it, right, is like the same thing as sort of addiction. And that was sort of what was so persuasive. And they also don't do a lot to protect minors in the sense that they don't check IDs, they don't verify the identity of the people who are on the platform. And they're very clear. They know there's young people on the platform. So I think these are the reasons why they're likely to lose this trial.
If they lose the trial, I imagine there will be a long appeals process.
That's right. So when I said there's two ways to win, you could win the trial, which I think is unlikely but possible. But then you can win on appeal. Now, on appeal, there's a lot of very interesting legal questions that go beyond the facts here about, whether Section 230 applies, First Amendment defenses, and we can expect those to very much be in play in the appeals process. And as you said, it could be lengthy. It could be up to a year or more.
Could be a year or more. And then the question becomes, is this the kind of thing that could actually get to the Supreme Court or no?
Yeah, I think it's possible. I think Section 230, which is the statute that sort of shields media companies from the content that is put on. In other words, if somebody posts something damaging to a child, that is not Meta's responsibility directly. That's what 230 does. The meaning of 230 is extremely contentious. It's very important. I could see the Supreme Court being very interested in that. The Supreme Court has also shown a lot of interest in First Amendment issues, so I could see that being something they might pick up. As it stands,
do you actually think the Supreme Court could actually try to rule on 230 itself?
Well, I'm not sure about that because there's a lot of controversy about what's going to happen to 230. They're constantly trying to change it, Congress is. And so I think that, the Supreme Court may want to rule on it, or they may want to just wait to see what Congress does with it, because everyone seems to agree that it's not quite working the way it's supposed to work.
I think Meta probably loses, but they get out with a settlement. I think that's the best case scenario. It's probably going to be multi-billion-dollar settlement. Robinhood getting a nice little takeoff right here, and Meta to an extent, almost 550, and Tessie still moving. But yeah, it's going to be some weeks of ugly headlines, and I think we just got to be ready for that. Ultimately, the earnings growth is there, the revenue growth is there. That's what the street cares about. But this is now another, broader overhang on the stock, and until that's gone, I think a lot of those fundamentals are not going to matter. Zeta getting a breakout service now, also getting a nice little breakout. 127. That is up 7%. I'm suing Amit for making bad jokes to make his channel so addicting. That would not be a lawsuit that I would be afraid of dealing with, because that would be an amazing way to let everybody know that I'm actually funny. A lot of you guys don't think I'm funny, but you guys laugh every morning. So I feel like empirically, you could say whatever you feel, but it just, the data doesn't back it up. Rocket Lab still down 3, but got a bounce from 74. As that flips, Broadcom still stuck down 5. Micron, once again, that 930 level, it continues to get rejected. At Service now, nice 7% move, dude. Seeing software get a little bit of a rebound, even though the semis are not really, the bottom's not falling out. Nebius is back into the 220s. It was at 212. Look at that. So it's not like you're seeing Nebius just continue to fall, but you are seeing the software names rebound. It's because we laugh at you. Okay. You know what? There's nothing I can say. So It's like, you know what? Okay, cool. Keep laughing at me. There's like literally no comeback I have for that. Absolutely no comeback. Amit is entertaining, but he's not funny. That's such an intellectual insult, dude. It's an intellectual insult. Webull has earnings today after the bell. We will have the podcast with me, Jose, Neil, and Tanner at around 4:20 today. So we'll cover some earnings, then we'll get into that podcast. Still don't have a name for that podcast, but every Wednesday we'll be streaming it live on the market close. ServiceNow still up 7. Meta trying to get up to 550. The Micron meeting with the Microns, I think tomorrow or tonight with Kramer at their Ohio factory. And so that's where you'd probably get some more updates. Does Adobe look bullish? Yes. Closing above the 200-day. Look, here's the thing. Adobe, when it got to 193, it was just, it's like the semis on July 29th. The July 29th moment for semis happened in April for software. Now, some of those software names still got wrecked on July 29th, but they weren't as wrecked. So I think a lot of the easy money was on that bounce. Now, if you buy Adobe, you're hoping that bounce continues and you get into like the 320s, 330s. I don't know if that happens, given the leadership change and given the CEO or given the earnings growth, just not being that impressive. But SaaS is not dead, and it's nice to see that SaaS is not dead. MicroStrategy, that's up today because Bitcoin's up. MicroStrategy above 100. Seeing some love there, as Chris says, into it. I have not done a ton of due diligence on this one, but this is the one that hasn't really recovered in this. There's like a few SaaS names that have just, AppLovin's one of them. Intuit's still down basically 40% this year. This was trading at the 780 range back in July of 2025. I don't think it's getting back there, but the idea that this can't get back to at least 400, 450 feels like it's purely rooted in Claude derangement syndrome. And maybe Claude is not going to kill every important application company. Iren does not have earnings today. Iren has earnings next week. So that's be after NVIDIA. HIM's getting a nice little move. The CEO did an interview yesterday. Some highlights from that interview were relatively positive. He talked about a Bluetooth pill bottle that could like use AI to like know when you're taking your pills and track like your schedule for taking medicine. I don't know why we need that, but the point is he brought up all these new ideas, and I think the market kind of liked some of the stuff he talked about. What do you think about drone delivery? So there were two big announcements for drone delivery. One is Amazon getting deeper into drones. Today they announced that they're bringing Prime Air to suburban Chicago and Atlanta. I've never ordered something via drone. So has anyone experienced this yet? I haven't seen what it feels like, but it's kind of crazy. This is going to grow Amazon's drone business footprint roughly 6x from today and put the service within reach of 30 million people by the end of 2026. And then you had the Uber announcement for drones. Uber Eats is 50% of their business, and this announcement hopefully should continue to grow that part of the business.
All right, you ready to do this?
I am.
Do you want to share the news, or should I?
I'll let you share the news.
All right, we're super excited to have Dari here today. We're announcing a partnership between Uber and Zipline.
That involves an investment, and more than that, a partnership for Zipline to power home delivery of hopefully 1 million and then more Uber Eats deliveries to your home incredibly quickly, incredibly delightful.
And that's 1 million deliveries a day. I heard the other day, 20% of all meals in the United States are prepared by a restaurant. 2% are delivered. So it just makes you realize, it's 12:01 a.m.
There's something magical in terms of that 15-minute delivery. And I think actually, if we get this right, not only can it be the next leg of growth for Uber and it can, Uber Eats and double, triple the business, but I think it's going to be the impetus for the majority of commerce. Excited
Thanks.
about this.
Yeah, we're really excited as well.
Telling you, I'm getting a little close to buying some Uber here. I do not think the business should be discounted this heavily because of robotaxi. half of the business has nothing to freaking do with a robotaxi. It's deliveries. Robotaxi is not delivering shit. Like it's not like it already is not really driving people at any meaningful scale that Uber is. Like there's just so many ways for them to expand, and all that additional growth is basically free because the market's not giving a premium to even their core legacy business. 96.29 right there on Robinhood. But if Amazon can also meaningfully scale drone delivery, I mean, you get an Amazon package in 2 days, sometimes in a day. If you can get it in like 20, 30 minutes, that's a whole nother TAM for Amazon to unlock. And I think that also gets people to be excited. Yeah, as Lane says, we will never need to leave our homes. Ever. That's true. Maybe Optimus ends up getting out of the car and delivering you the package. Maybe that's fair. Uber also has a ton of data. That is correct. Uber has a ton of data. Someone did some really good analysis on it yesterday as well. Let's see if I can pull it up. But they really broke down the numbers, and they were like, even if you discount 50% of this business, like 50% of it gets torn away because of robotaxi, this business still barely has a multiple. And, it makes you wonder if this is just going to be a classic breakout eventually when it actually happens. SoFi getting a little bit of love today. That continues to be more green. SoFi was stuck below 17 or below 18 yesterday, 18.45. Robinhood also, I don't know why Hood is, I know Vlad was on CNBC today, but 5% is actually pretty big given Hood's been flat. SoFi also 4% is relatively big. Oh, it's got to be Bitcoin and ETH, right? Yeah, look at BTC go. She's trying to go for 66. ETH trying to go for 2,000. When's the last time we saw 2K on ETH? It was June 1st. Is oil still up? Oil is up 2%, $86, and crypto's still up. Maybe it's because of Paul Atkins yesterday kind of affirming that this Clarity Act is coming pretty soon.
When I took office, I pledged to ensure that the United States remains the crypto capital of the world. For too long, issuers and investors had to navigate an activist SEC weaponized against this asset class. The result has been uncertainty and inefficiency, chasing crypto asset innovation outside of the United States. So today, I'm excited to announce that the SEC is taking the most historic step yet to modernize federal securities regulations for crypto assets. The United States must and will lead. Our new rule proposal, Regulation Crypto Assets, will ensure that we do. Now, let me be clear. The SEC continues to support congressional work on the Clarity Act, and we expect to see the bill reach the president's desk. Under our current statutory authority, we are acting. The work before us is too important. The Commission's March 2026 interpretation explained how a non-security crypto asset may become subject to, and how it may cease to be subject to, an investment contract, which is a security under law. Regulation Crypto Assets provides issuers of those investment contracts with a clear path to comply with federal securities laws within those parameters. Today's proposal sits at the center of this Commission's capital formation agenda and is essential to providing a framework for crypto asset fundraising. It is the Commission's answer to the question that has puzzled innovators since the birth of the blockchain. How can I raise capital to develop a crypto asset while I am still working to develop the network where it will be used?
So the SEC gave a lot more guidance on that yesterday. And, it's not the Clarity Act, but it's like Paul Atkins is on our side when it comes to crypto. And like Gary Gensler was not, right? So I think that in and of itself is like a level of exuberance that's coming back to crypto. And who knows, man? Bitcoin's the only real asset that hasn't participated in this bull market in a meaningful way. Only like macro assets. Stocks have done well this year. Gold's done well this year. Bond yields are going higher. It's like the Bitcoin's the only one that really, oil's obviously got I feel like it's time. And if that's how we end out Q4, now if we get a rate hike, we can kiss that goodbye. But if we ignore it, Netflix trying to go for 81, I think that would be bullish. Mate, aren't you anti-crypto? What do you mean our side? Look, I am the biggest bull in the world when it comes to crypto. When I see Robinhood go up, because when Robinhood's going down and Bitcoin's going down, crypto is a bunch of BS. When Robinhood's going up And Bitcoin's, I love crypto, dude. I'm a crypto maximalist. So yeah, our side, I'm part of the digital ecosystem, dude. No, in all seriousness, I've never been anti-crypto. I like owning businesses. And one business I own has a lot of correlation to crypto, which is Robinhood. So, you know, it is what it is. But I also don't think the Gary Gensler regime of just having crazy levels of regulation and not letting people ultimately create products and services on something that is inevitable. Decentralized finance and tokenized real world assets are inevitable. Hood going for 97. If it's happening, it's happening. And we can't step in the way for that, because if we don't do something about it, other countries are going to take the lead, and that's just not a good thing in general. And so I am super on board with common sense legislation. It's just enough is enough. You know, it's been 2 years since Trump got elected. It's time to like have this stuff passed. MRVL 234 is also up 8%. What else do we have? What else? Oh, White House is hosting crypto and prediction market executives day. Okay, so this is going to be interesting. So it's not like tech executives. Vlad's definitely going to be there. There you go, 97. Vlad was in DC for the interview today. So Vlad will probably be there. Brian Armstrong will probably be there. You'll probably have the Kalshi guys there. So whatever summit they have today, it's not going to be like AI summit. I mean, that's also probably why Bitcoin's running, because you have all the crypto CEOs with Trump. Yeah, some of these neoclouds recovering. I mean, they're not as red as they were. Keel just flipped green. Sandus was down 7. Now it's down 2. Moderna, 145 from 163. So whoever shorted in the 160s, you got a nice $20 move here. There's no news on ServiceNow. I think it's just software getting some love today after being stuck for the past couple of days. And the semis are not also going down as much as they were before. SoFi also up 5. I mean, SoFi is kind of a crypto proxy. It's not as aggressive as some of the other crypto names, but stablecoin, trading crypto on the platform, I mean, that stuff is still part of SoFi's ecosystem. SPY, look at that, dude. We're getting back everything we lost yesterday. Everything. You can't like crypto but talk shit about Sailor. I think if you like crypto, you are obligated to talk shit. Do you know the amount of people that I know that love crypto but hate Sailor? Assuming that Sailor is the person you can't talk shit about if you're into crypto, I feel like is the exact opposite take. I feel like people that love crypto have a lot of issues with Sailor. Look, I don't hate Sailor. I just, I think a lot of the strategies that he's used to develop these special dividends are just not that meaningful and effective, and it screws over a lot of people. But nonetheless, he buys Bitcoin. He is a part of this crypto ecosystem, and it's important for MicroStrategy to be involved. Here is the latest update on this OpenAI revenue headline, which I think is what really took stocks down last night after these numbers came out.
Reportedly seeing deeper losses in the second quarter, at least, while sales grew sequentially. That double-digit growth was outshined by rival Anthropic, which is also poised to go public. The Wall Street Journal now with some new numbers overnight. The ones that really stand out, guys, are these operating margins, which sank further into the red, at least in the second quarter. Its operating loss, which does include stock-based compensation, grew to $12.3 billion in the quarter, well outpacing some of that revenue growth. Losses were up from about $9 billion when you look at the first quarter. This is again, according to the Journal. For total net revenue, it did bring in just under $7 billion in the 3 months that ended in June, according to that reporting, and it was up about 18%. We have reported on some more recent numbers, though. If you look at July, that does seem to signal uptick since the end of June, which was the end of this quarter when some of this reporting is out there. We have reported that it was about 20% growth when you look at the more recent month. Greg Brockman confirmed that on our air earlier in the week. 32% growth when you look at enterprise. For most companies, guys, double-digit revenue growth would be something that a lot of investors would be cheering on, but they are now being directly compared to Anthropic. The AI lab started, of course, by OpenAI co-founders. I reported earlier this week, Anthropic was profitable, at least on an EBITDA basis. It did bring in $11.5 billion in the quarter, according to sources that I've talked to. We have also reported on some of the ARR numbers for both of these companies. I have heard from sources, OpenAI is now around $40 billion. Anthropic ramped up to $65 billion in the recent quarter. Back over to you.
Kate, is there anything we could derive from these figures and just the changing of leadership between OpenAI and Anthropic, just about the stickiness of their business model? Obviously, OpenAI surpassing Anthropic in Q2. How easy is it for that to reverse, or another competitor to just quickly ramp up and take that leadership position? And what does that mean for investors, in a potential IPO, just the kind of moat around these businesses?
Leslie, the one thing that's standing out to me is the profitability picture here. I think when we talk about the leadership changes, it's interesting. The enterprise growth was really strong, at least for OpenAI, and that's where the leadership shakeup happened. So I've been trying to kind of read the tea leaves on that. I haven't had any reporting or had any sort of progress on kind of what actually happened there and why, if they are seeing 30% revenue growth on enterprise. You saw that shakeup, and when we mentioned the shakeup, I should say, chief revenue officer got shifted around, and that's been a big change at OpenAI. The profit profile looks so different for these companies. A lot of these numbers, yes, they're backwards looking. This is the second quarter, but when you compare Anthropic, which at least on an EBITDA basis is profitable, to OpenAI, which has seen deeper and deeper losses, it calls into question some of the spending. It also brings up this data center question. OpenAI's moat, as they've described it, has been they're spending more on data centers. They want more compute, and that translates directly to revenue, which CFO Sarah Fryer has laid out. If you do start to see more pushback, which it seems like there's been in this inflection this week, there's been more of a grassroots effort to push back on data centers, this really could be a bottleneck for both of these companies. OpenAI, much more exposed here, and they're spending more.
Yeah, we talked about this GOP Senate memo saying it's probably the biggest mover of some voters, especially in swing states, and we're watching Pennsylvania closely. Kate, thanks. Kate Rooney. For more on what this means for
BTC, these OpenAI Anthropic headlines, I mean, their operating margins, operating losses, not what the street really wants to see. But man, when's the last time you had a $3,000 pump on crypto? BMNR back over 10% in a day. ETH, is it at 2,000? 2,000 officially for the first time in 2 months. Scotty, thanks for the super chat. Profit taking from AI stocks moving into crypto. I think there are some algos that are probably selling off some of the AI names into crypto, but I don't think there's a structural rotation into crypto at all. I mean, 3% on Bitcoin is nothing more broadly. Now, Bitcoin, we're to get to like 75,000 today. Yeah, that liquidity's got to come from somewhere. I think it would probably come from some of the hot AI stocks. This is actually, it's a pseudo bear case for AI, because part of the reason why, and this is anecdotally, there's a lot of crypto people I know on Twitter. They've all been posting about AI and going long Micron and SanDisk and MRVL perpetual futures. Like a lot of the crypto traders that are on X started trading AI stocks over the past 3 months because that's where all the volume and attention was. And that brought in more liquidity, more leverage, which also led to the July blow up. I mean, is there a world where a lot of people say, all right, the AI trade has made enough money, let's go to crypto? And does that marginally take some money out of these high-flying names and just brings it back to Bitcoin and ETH and Solana and hype and all those? I mean, I find that hard to believe just because of all the hype there is around AI. But if the crypto names could really make a move, like Bitcoin getting up to like 70 pretty soon, I think a lot of people will say, hey, that was the bottom, and it is time for crypto to have some fun. Now, would it actually take away that much volume from the AI stocks? No, because there's just too many institutional players in this game. But you would have a ton of money at least trying to come back into crypto. ServiceNow still up 6% on the day. Dude, that would be fun. End of year, we get a Bitcoin pump. Robinhood, Coinbase, SoFi is probably going to benefit from it. BMNR, Strategy. Where's STRC? Still not at par yet, but it's getting closer. I mean, even these neoclouds, Iran, they still have a ton of Bitcoin on their balance sheet, right? Marathon has a ton of CleanSpark. Marathon's up 6% right here. Yeah, 70,000, I agree, would be a super big psychological level. It would line up also with that cycle if we actually get a pump going into October. ServiceNow got an upgrade to 140. Okay, that's probably why that's helping it. Yeah, ServiceNow upgrade to 140 here today. I mean, dude, what happens? Here's the question. I actually got 150 from Bank of America as well. Here's the question. What happens? Circle also doing great today. What happens if the South Koreans come back to crypto? What happens if our good friends from South Korea say SK Hynix isn't fun anymore, Samsung's not fun anymore, going back to BTC? I mean, Tom Lee's Korean, right? There's got to be some connection there, right? Like, you're telling me there's not a bunch of South Koreans that bought BMR just because Tom Lee's Korean? I was like, he better be Korean. If he's not Korean, that's going to be racist. I hope to God this man is Korean right now. But the point is, maybe some of that money comes back. Maybe some of that money comes back. ServiceNow 127 still up. Still up right here on the day. Where's SK Hynix? It was down 5. Now it's up 3. SK Hynix coming back as well. Okay. I mean, again, I'm like really speculating here, but if crypto can show momentum, it will have people come back so quickly that have been waiting to trade this thing. I mean, IBIT, you got a lot of institutional money that's been stuck in this thing for a while. The inflows have been horrible for the past couple of weeks. You have that money that potentially comes back. I mean, there could just be a ton of excitement that gets more value here. Look at the Bitcoin chart and tell me it's not the most bullish setup. Yeah, I mean, Jason was saying that yesterday as well. I just think every piece of bad news we get, Bitcoin does nothing. That means we've got to have bottomed. Like what is really going to take this thing down? You know, Saylor sold. If I told you 4 years ago Saylor was going to sell, you would think, you know, everyone would be scared of that because he was the guy who was never promising to never sell. He even sold Bitcoin in the midst of all these ugly headlines. I think in July, the worst it got to was like 59, like the absolute worst it got to. No, it touched 62 in July. 61.9. It didn't even get below 60 in July, dude. And July was like the biggest deleveraging event we've seen. Circles up 10% in 5 years. Maybe come. Oh yeah, what is the rainbow chart? You guys know about the rainbow chart, right? I learned about this 3 years ago. Hey, I know a lot about rainbows. If you catch my grift, rainbow saying not lie. Look at that. Blue is a buy. It's saying to buy. Basically, a fire sale is the dark blue. That's where we're at. The fire sale. I mean, maybe. Maybe this is it. Maybe we're back. And if we're back, Hood's going to 120. And we're going to have some fun end of year. Google 344, Microsoft consolidating in this 480 range. That was a good joke. Some of you guys definitely laughed about that. That was a good joke. What is this chart? I don't even know like the functionality of this chart, but it's been pretty freaking accurate. If you type in Bitcoin rainbow chart on Google, you can take a look at it. I don't know how it's designed or what's the methodology, but it works. When it gets to the red, you sell. When it gets to the blue, you buy. And maybe it's time to buy. Quote unquote joke. Yeah, crypto also had its crazy deleveraging back in October 10th, right? That was their semiconductor July moment where everything fell down. Okay, what other headlines do we have? Today was a busy day. Moderna, MRVL. The MRVL news, I think, is still super bullish, even though it's losing some of its pump. Whoa, what is this? Cactus, this is real? Scott's toilet paper is public. Wait. No, sorry. Scott's Miracle Grow Grass. It's a public company. It's up 5%. Because Trump... Cactus, is there a video for that? Trump just posted... Is this on Truth? Trump just said their grass is free of charge. What the hell is this? Hold on. This is not the toilet paper. This is Scott's Grass. Anyone know this company? Let me see if there's a video. Cactus, there's got to be a video on this. He has this screenshot. It's from a video, right? Free grass. Scott's Miracle Grow provided grass free of charge. Oh, is this for the ballroom? There's the picture. Grass and fertilizer. Dude, I thought he was talking about the toilet paper. I didn't even know this was a public company. There you go, up 5%. That happened just now, right? Yeah, like literally 3 minutes ago. Cactus, can you send the video if there is a video? From the White House. The grass was in terrible shape, and we have a great man that works here for 54 years, Dale, and he said it'd be nice to be able to change the grass. You know, grass has a life, like humans have a life. If you come back in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, it's in shock. But you come back in 2 or 3 weeks, this has all been redone. It's all been topsoiled. If you remember, it had sunken areas. It was pretty bad. It was given free of charge by Scott's Miracle Grow. Scott's is a great company. They actually contributed to my campaign. I must be honest. So Trump is giving a tour to a bunch of people right now, and that's where that quote came from. Okay, well, I think this is the most amount of volume Scott's Miracle Grass has gotten in a while, as that's up 5%. Bro, I thought it was the toilet paper. What's the company that owns the toilet paper? What's the holding company? Is that just Procter & Gamble? Kimberly-Clark Corporation, large global consumer goods company. Is that they also own Huggies, and they own oh, that's public. That's up 8% this year. KMB. They also own Scott's. How did you guys know this? Who? $37 billion company. Okay, I got the video. Shout out to Cactus. Got the video right here. Let's pull this up. You obviously don't do a lot of yard work. Dude. I think I've mowed the lawn like 3 times in my life. Like I'm not good with my hands in the outdoors, bro. I don't know why people want to go camping. Why do you want to build a tent? Like we need Wi-Fi and we need air conditioner. Why do we have to be out there in the forest? Like that's just not me. It's not who I am.
But this grass is the highest quality. It was given free of charge by Scott's Miracle Grow. Scott's. And Scott's is a great company. They actually contributed to my campaign. I must be honest. You'll figure that one out. And they said to me, sir, we'd like to replace the grass at the White House with the highest quality grass and do a real job. So Scott's, I want to thank Scott's Miracle Grow. It's I think the biggest grass company in the world, somebody said, but it's very big and very good. And the owners are fantastic people. And I want to thank them. So this side, but this grass.
Okay, there you go. Scott's Grass up on the day. BTC. Can we keep this going, folks? Can we keep it going? We need Trump to just be like giga bullish today on crypto with all these executives. Robinhood, we are at 96.50. We literally just need a ton of good news or good sentiment to get in the right direction. BMNR tracking up, ETH tracking up, SPY, nice little 0.5%. I don't know the headline on Tesla, guys. I don't know. It's up 3% today. I mean, Tesla, look, sometimes it moves for no reason, but usually there's a little something that is part of why it moves. It is Tesla and Nvidia are basically the number 1 and 2 traded stock in the market every day when it comes to options. As of right now, yep, Tesla, Nvidia, Apple. So far today, there's been about 2 hours of trading. The robotaxi news was yesterday, though. that they're having this event and stuff. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's residual from that. Tesla's at 1 million options traded today. Nvidia, another 1 million. Apple, Intel, Micron are top 5. Then you have SpaceX. Moderna's up there. There's actually a lot more puts than calls on Moderna. Look at that, 150,000 puts versus 92,000 calls. So you definitely have some people probably not believing it deserves to be up 120% today. Palantir, Nebius, Broadcom, AMD, Meta's up there. Riot, Google, Marvell, MicroStrategy, and CoreWeave are there today. Interesting price action throughout the day. Went a little red when the market opened, still red in certain sectors, but a lot of these names, Circle, that's up, Hynix, that's up, Microsoft, that's up, Marvell still holding 8. All these names still coming back. Do you think Broadcom's a good buy? Yes. I bought it yesterday. I think it's an overreaction to the Google Marvell news. Yeah, I mean, it's down from 430. I don't think it deserves to be down here at these levels with the growth that they put up. Having said that, I also think Broadcom could be selling off because it's time for NVIDIA to shine, right? A lot of the large cap semis, TSM, Broadcom, they take a breather when NVIDIA has the floor. And, you know, ironically, if NVIDIA goes down, they all go down. If NVIDIA goes up, they all kind of normalize, but NVIDIA still goes down. So, or at least NVIDIA has really good earnings. So I think next week, all eyes will be on Jensen to keep this going. Yeah, Bloom still getting hit. Dude, we need Bloom like below 200, like meaningfully. 185, 190. And it can get there. It's volatile. It's not like it can't get there. I feel we've got to be patient for it to get there. Kathy's buying a ton of NVIDIA. She bought even more yesterday. She's buying it. Yeah, she bought Broadcom as well. She's buying a ton of these large cap semis. Rocket Lab, are we still red? Still red on the lab of rockets. Can we get the link to Cactus Jack? Yes. For those that are asking, again, this is a community open sourced news terminal. Anyone can sign up for free. Links to your WhatsApp. And even when I'm not live, you can get access to all of the news flow that's going on. Is there a way to see historical open interest data? I think so. I'm pretty, Jason would know for sure. Some of you guys in the chat probably know. A lot of this stuff is recorded. Some of this stuff you can license from exchanges. Like the NASDAQ, NYSE, they have a lot of this data. I don't know if you could easily find like last week's vault. Well, no, on the brokerages, you can see. Well, actually, no. Yeah, like on Robinhood, after an option expires, it's not in the chain anymore. So you can't really see how much was traded. So it's not that easily to do on your own, but there's definitely like Data Bento. I think that's a website that sells a lot of this data. All this stuff is tracked and recorded. It's a question of licensing and paying for the data to get access to it. And usually if you're not using it from a commercial perspective, it's like $50 a month or something. It's not that expensive to get the data. Marvell still up 8%. AMD, we were down at 460. It's at 467. A little bit of a move up. Elf is indeed up 100% from the June lows. Dude, HIMS is also up basically 100% from the April lows. I mean, a lot of these names, they're still down on the year, but they bottomed pretty aggressively. And if you just stepped in, you know, you caught a 2x, even if those stocks are still down for the year. Wow, BTC. Are we actually coming back? $40 from 67. Can we get there? Can we do it? I wonder what that would do to the market. 100,000 Bitcoin. I wonder if that would be kind of bearish, taking away a lot of volume from other sectors. I wonder if that would just be like crazy bullish. Everyone's risk on. I wonder if it would. I wonder if Bitcoin rising is the easiest signal from the market to interpret that we absolutely are getting, maybe not a rate cut, but we're definitely not getting a rate hike. You know, maybe that's the argument. Here's the update on that Pennsylvania news. Again, Nebius is affected by this. They have 20% of their contracted power in Pennsylvania, because you're seeing a lot more backlash around data centers. Did we hit 67? There it is, 67,124. It's been some time, but Bitcoin making a move.
Backlash against data centers. It's becoming a bit of a political football. Eamon Javers has more from DC. A lot of, stories about this lately, about how it's really affecting the heartland and what the AI companies are doing about it as well, Eamon.
Yeah, Leslie, that's right. We're seeing a lot of this just over the past 24 and 48 hours. Democratic Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro became the latest politician with potential national political ambitions to take steps to put limits on data center growth in his state yesterday, signing an executive order to place conditions on new development. The governor's office says the new order will, quote, demand developers meet strict standards on energy affordability, environmental protection, workforce and economic development, transparency, and community engagement. Now, Shapiro's move is a sign of just how sensitive voters have become to untrammeled data center growth, the same development that the AI industry says it needs to live up to the hype of the multi-trillion-dollar industry. Voters are expressing concerns about electricity and water consumption, land use, and quality of life disruptions from these large new data centers in their areas. A poll conducted by Politico last month found that 41% of Americans would oppose a data center being built within 3 miles of where they live, which was up sharply from 28% back in January. Now, the number supporting those projects, that number dropped from 37% to 24 over that same time period, according to the Politico poll. And it's not just among Democrats. Republican Texas Governor Greg Abbott has been taking heat out on the campaign trail over data center development in his state. And this month, he issued a directive to audit new data centers in the state. He said no new data center connections to the state electrical grid can be moved forward until the audits occur.
So it's Republicans and Democrats. It's obviously been both sides that have been getting a bit more aggressive around these data centers. And, it's going to create different political issues for many of these neoclouds that are trying to expand their data centers, obviously for the large cap semis like NVIDIA. Wow, BTC. Wow. Is it happening, folks? Is it actually happening? Like, is it legit happening, or is this just a little dream? What do we think? Do we think it's actually happening? My goodness. It's about to hit 69. It's about to hit 69. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. It's not going to do 70. Is it actually going to do, guys, is it actually going to touch 7? Where's ETH? ETH trying to go for 2,100. Is it actually? It was at 64,000 less than 20 minutes ago. We have not had a day like this in a very long time. Robinhood's almost 98. I mean, this is, I gotta be a little careful here if you're trading Hood. If this ends up short-term topping, Hood's going down. You gotta be a little careful here if you're trading it, but if you're just sitting back and letting Coinbase, Hood, MicroStrategy, BMNR, whatever's in your portfolio, crypto derivative, doing its thing, just letting it do its thing is exciting right now because it hasn't had this type of beta to Bitcoin in a long time, dude. This is a $4,500 candle right here. Where's Coinbase? Coinbase has got to be moving here. Yeah, Coinbase up 11. Wow, Hood's not even up as much as, well, that makes sense because coin is way more correlated. ASST, this is another treasury. This one is down like a lot this year. Where was it at? It was at in January. It was at 19. In 2025, it was $250 in September of 2025. Now it's at 14, right? So it's obviously, but it got all the way down to like the $5 range. So it's obviously been a big move right here. Can we hold it is the question. Can we hold it? I mean, yeah, Bitcoin 120 at Hood at 150. And Hood's a way better company than it is back then if we actually get Bitcoin to come back. Trump's taking question from reporters. Let's see what he's saying here.
He's going to go through, but they come through. And over the last couple of weeks, we've had a lot of oil coming in. A lot of oil. It's not going to be perfect, but it's a lot of oil coming in. A lot. In fact, people are amazed. One of the reasons that oil hasn't gone to like the proverbial $300 a barrel, it's at 83, 84, 85. And it'll be a lot lower when this is over because we have plenty of oil. But one of the reasons it never went into 3 and 350 numbers because we do. We have a lot coming in. And people are finding alternatives. And you know one of the alternatives? Texas. You know another one? Alaska. Louisiana. They're coming to the United States to get oil. And people say, oh, you shouldn't say that because it makes it sound, well, it is what it is. I mean, they're coming to Texas, Louisiana, and Alaska to get oil. Mr. President, about what? Reopen negotiations. Maybe at some point, but right now, I think the situation is so good, but maybe at some point. Look, it's very simple. They have to get rid of completely. They have to get rid of no nuclear weapons. Iran cannot have a nuclear. You know why? Because they'd use it, and we're not going to let them use it. So Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't. Thank you very much. I'm glad you came out. Thank you.
All right. So the president there talking about a couple of things. You know, he paused tariffs.
All right, so nothing too crazy from Trump. Oh my gosh, is it real or is it not real? Ew, 69.2 to 67.9. Oh my gosh, dude. Is it fake or is it real? We need to know. What do people think? Put in the chat right now, fake or real? I mean, that move to 69 felt like there was some real momentum behind it. Obviously, there's a lot of sellers that are there. Robinhood now taking a breather, same with Coinbase. Look, if HUD's going to end up 6%, Coinbase is going to end up 11%, SoFi's up 5%. These stocks are just in the portfolio doing their thing. I would not be mad about that. It's just like, man, we're so close to really making a move for it. It's really fake. Danny says it's cake. It's fake. I think you meant to ask if it's a fantasy. Who bought it now? Who bought crypto today? Who's trading it right now? Or like just jumped into it at 69? I don't think that 69 was fake, bro. I don't think that was I think that was real buying coming. There's obviously sellers you have to get beyond. But I don't think that was fake. I think that was a big candle up. That's the market feeling excited about this Trump meeting today with crypto people. A few people saying yes. Also, clarity, like this thing should be getting passed by the end of this year. All it needs is the Senate vote. Robin trying to get back up to 98. Like that in and of itself, I know it's not a rate cut type of catalyst, but it's definitely not Bitcoin stuck at 60K type of catalyst. It should have a move there. S&P highs of day. That always helps. Well, not exactly highs of day, but very close. That always helps with crypto. Do you guys remember who was on the stream with me last year? Robinhood breakout above 90. Okay, so Hood's still moving even though crypto took a breather or Bitcoin took a $1,500 candle to the downside. So either people are front running because they think Bitcoin's going to come back, or you're just getting a lot of speculators now jumping in and they're just buying it up because they think the stock is momentum. But who was with me that day in July when we saw crypto? Dude, we saw it go up like $14,000, right? It legit went from like 100 to 114. And I was live, and it was just like, it's the first time I've ever saw a candle that aggressive. Yeah, Benny was there. I mean, it's been a minute since we had a day like that. Ironically, like a couple weeks later was the top. We got to 114 that day, then we got to 129 a few weeks later, and then boom, that was it. And it's just been a while since then. IBIT has more than double the average volume today. Yeah, it has to with this type of level. of excitement. IBIT volumes at 75 million shares. Yeah, the average is around 32 million. I mean, there's $50 billion of assets in IBIT. We should get some of that. Meta 552. Meta's coming back a little bit. 546 felt a little ugly and egregious, but the problem with Meta is every dip and every pump until this trial is over, it's kind of just, you don't know what's going to happen. Circle's up 11. Dude, the worst thing that could happen today for Bitcoin is that we just drop all the way back to 66, 65. Like if that happens, a lot of this excitement's going to go away. If we can just hold it, we don't even have to go higher than 68. If we could just hold 68, not 67, 68 is like, you know, pushing 70. Obviously 69 would be amazing, but if we can hold this range, I think the market will be happy. 1.1 billion in short positions were liquidated on Bitcoin in the past hour. Goodness gracious. 110,000 traders were liquidated. Total liquidations 1.45 billion. The largest single liquidation happened actually on ETH for 32 million for someone who is short. I mean, we haven't had liquidations on the short side for a while. Today's the first day where it's actually trying to happen. ETH 2100. She's trying. She got very close. Yeah, I don't think it's a short here, dude. Maybe it's not a aggressive long because it's already up 7% today, but I don't know if it's a short. I think that move has real momentum behind it. And if we're wrong, then we're going to see this get faded pretty soon. But Fed minutes are at 2:30, so we're not going to have the market reactions to that for a while. But we will cover that on the close. All right, that is what we got for today, folks. I will be back on the close. We'll have some earnings, Weebles after the bell. We'll have Tanner, Jose, and Neil. And we will get into a lot of discussion around the semis. In general, those OpenAI revenue numbers, the market didn't love, but I don't know if the market is that upset now that it's had about 20 hours to digest it. A lot of the semis that took a dip, they're either recovering or relatively flat. Netflix is up in the day. Uber, Airbnb, those are up. Apple getting a rebound up 2%. Bitcoin, I think, has become the story. MRVL was the big headline with Google getting ready to buy 8% of it. But if this price action continues, I think Bitcoin will be the story here for the day. Yeah, we got to enjoy the moment. We gotta, it's been so long for this. Got to enjoy the moment. CoreWeave goes back green. Okay, there you go. CoreWeave, 93.55. All right, let's do word of the day. And then we will be done for the day. Give me another word of the day. Moderna is also, dude, there's so many things happening today. Yeah, Moderna is also a story. Dude, 137. Okay, 160 to 137. That was the short. We'll see if it stabilizes there, but obviously it's still up massively today from the lows. Word of the day. Sorites. A paradox about how many tiny individual insignificant changes can eventually produce a fundamental transformation. The company's decline was a Sorites problem. No single quarter looked catastrophic, but years of small deteriorations eventually transformed the business. Okay, Sorites. That is our word of the day. Yeah, Bitcoin, BTC is the word. Rainbow, really, is the word of the day. Let's see, man. It's time. This thing has been stuck for over a year. It is time. And if it is time, that could create a brand new catalyst for a variety of different sectors in this market. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I will be back on the close. I will link Steve's stream right here. What do we spam him with? Rainbow. Rainbow emoji or the word rainbow. That'll be the spam for Mr. Steven Fiorillo today. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'll be back on the close. We'll be here with Tanner, Neil, and Jose. And we'll keep going from there. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you all. See you guys on the close. Bye, everybody.